Why didn't you tell me? If I had known, I would have. Who do you think you are? I don't care about an old man turning 60. How can anyone make good decisions at that age? What a joke. I've only had feelings for you since we got married, but now, I don't feel anything anymore. I'm Nancy, my husband, Max, and I raised 2 kids together. Recently, our youngest turned 18. Raising kids for over 20 years wasn't easy, but having them helped me stay strong. I'm really thankful for their support. Max supported our kids too, and for that, I thought he was a good husband, until one day, everything changed. I came home early from work one afternoon and heard Max and our son, Aaron, talking and laughing inside. Hey, now that I'm 20, I think we can start what we planned. Yeah, I've been thinking the same thing. We're father and son, after all. When should we tell her? I'll bring it up this weekend. I'm so excited. I wonder what she'll do. She'll probably cry and beg me to stop. When will Abby be my new mom? She's ready whenever. Then I'll just divorce her. They were laughing, not realizing I was standing right outside the door, listening. I was shocked. I thought our family was happy, but they were talking about me like I wasn't even there, planning a divorce and talking about a woman named Abby. Was she Max's mistress? How long had they been planning this? I didn't know how to react. My phone had somehow started recording their conversation. I quietly left the house. Outside, I saw a mother with a small child. It made me feel so sad. Did Aaron hate me too? If it was just Max, I could handle it, but now my own son was part of this plan. And he was so casually talking about Abby, Max's mistress. I couldn't help but wonder how many times they had all met without me knowing. I called my daughter, Melanie, right away, desperate for some comfort. The phone rang twice before she answered. Hi, Melanie, are you okay? What's wrong, Mom? Your voice sounds weird. I'm just at the usual cafe near our house. Okay, I'll be right there. Melanie has always been independent, even as a child. She never asked for money when she went to college, and now that she's working, she takes care of herself. She rushed to meet me at the cafe, just like always. Mom, what's going on? I hesitated, not sure whether to tell her the truth. Could this have something to do with Dad? I thought so. I wasn't ready to explain everything, so I asked her something instead. Is there anything I've done wrong as a mom? Anything you don't like? Why are you asking that, Mom? I just thought. Now that Aaron's an adult and I can focus on myself, maybe I should look at my own life. Melanie stared at me, confused. Mom, there's nothing wrong. I'm really grateful for you. You and Dad worked hard, but it was mostly you, Mom, who did everything for me and Aaron. Really? What about your dad? He worked too. Well, he worked, but that's just what he was supposed to do. You did everything else. Melanie was right. Max had never really helped with family life, other than going to work. She had pointed out how little he had participated in raising us. What's going on with you and Dad? Tell me everything. I'm not a kid anymore, and maybe I can help. Melanie wanted to know what was going on with Max and Aaron. I'm in shock, I said. Yeah, me too. Well, what are you going to do about it? I guess I'll have to get a divorce. Yeah, I think that's the best option. Let me hear the recording. I didn't want to, but Melanie insisted, so I played the recording for her. I can't forgive them for this. Mom, we need more proof. A recording alone isn't enough. I'll ask a friend to help us. For now, stay at my place tonight, okay? The next day, Melanie had the day off, so she went out in the morning. I went to work, but later that day, she called me. Mom, let's meet up after work and go to the detective agency. Okay, thank you, and don't worry, I found a lawyer. Got it, thanks again. Melanie quickly made sure everything was set up for the divorce. After work, I met her at the detective agency. Okay, you'll have 3 days to get the evidence, the detective said. Got it. From what I hear in this recording, your husband has no idea how serious this is, but are you ready for whatever happens next? Yes, divorce is the only choice. I just want it to go as smoothly as possible. Understood, I'll do my job. The detective said it would take 4 days to gather everything, but I was called back in 2 days. 1 day of spying was enough to get everything we need, he said with a sly smile. Okay, thank you. I looked at the evidence the detective gathered. Max wasn't even trying to hide his affair. There were pictures of him walking around with his mistress, holding hands. Some of the photos were shocking, but they showed the truth. I took the evidence to the lawyer I had an appointment with. The female lawyer told me she had been through a similar experience. Her husband had also betrayed her, just like Max had betrayed me. She laughed in disbelief when she saw the evidence, saying it was just as bad as it seemed. She assured me that I would not only get alimony but also a severe punishment for Max. It was a busy and overwhelming week. During this time, I got a large alimony payment and finalized the divorce. Melanie and I went to my in-laws' house to show them the truth. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel sad. My in-laws had always been kind to me, but they needed to see all the evidence. My father-in-law, Albert, was really angry, and my mother-in-law, Sarah, was completely shocked. Well, of course, this is how it would be. Nancy, I never thought our foolish son would do something like this at his age. I'm so sorry, I can't believe he's my son. Disgusting. Thank you for your time today. With this evidence, I've decided to divorce him. I just wanted to let you know. I agree, no wonder you're divorcing him. Grandpa, it's not just him, Aaron is just as bad. Melanie played the recording of Max and Aaron to my in-laws, and they were both stunned. After Aaron said he wanted to go to graduate school, I'm not going to support someone who disrespects others like this, Albert said. Sarah nodded in agreement. Nancy, if you divorce him, come visit us whenever you can. You're like a daughter to us now. Don't worry, Max will never step foot in this house again. Thank you. You and Albert are like real family to me. I couldn't hold back my tears. My in-laws had always been so kind to me, and I loved them deeply. Knowing they would disown their own son to support me made me feel better, even though I knew this meant I wouldn't see them as often once I divorced Max. The next day, I confronted Max and Aaron. I went home with Melanie and my lawyer. Max hadn't contacted me even once in the 4 days I was gone, which told me everything I needed to know about how he felt. Who's here? Max asked when we arrived. This is Nancy's lawyer. Her name is Natalie. Her lawyer? You're here for the divorce, huh? Yeah, I want a divorce, but I'll take whatever comes from it. Aaron was acting cocky, as usual. This is perfect. You'll get your quick divorce. Alimony, right? You can pay for that, can't you, Dad? Max yelled as if Aaron's comment pushed him over the edge. Yeah, I suppose so. At least it saves me from explaining everything to her. Right, too bad Abby isn't here though. Wait, how do you know about Abby? I know, I even went to the detective agency. It seems you two were seeing each other every day. That makes sense if she's just one of your business partners. You've been together all this time, both in business and personally. Oh, I see, so you know about Abby. Well, since you know everything, it's simple. I don't want a mother like you. You're just a plain, old woman. I want a young, beautiful mother like Abby. Are you serious? Do you really not understand who helped you get here? Huh? It was Dad, obviously. Mom did all the hard work, running the house and doing everything else. Melanie, how can you talk about your father like that? Max shouted. Huh? I don't even see you as my parents anymore. Besides, Aaron called Mom that person too. Why is it okay for him but not for me? I've always hated how you always disagreed with everything. And how can I respect you as a parent when you're chasing after a woman 20 years younger than you? If you were single, I wouldn't care, but you have a family. That's creepy. Max couldn't say anything back to Melanie since she was right. Dad, enough. Let's get him out of here and invite Abby over, Melanie said. Right, let's sign the divorce papers. I took out the divorce papers I had prepared and handed them to Max. He seemed surprised, but Aaron pushed him to sign them. We're asking for $140,000 in alimony and property division. The joint property is worth $50,000, and the alimony is $40,000. Based on your income, this is reasonable. Just pay it, Dad. Abby will take care of it. Okay. Max transferred the $140,000, and I filed the divorce papers with the government office. We didn't need to use the evidence from the detective agency in the end. I was just glad we were able to get the divorce on our own terms. Hey, Mom, can you give me the data? Okay, but what are you planning to do with it? Don't worry, I won't use it for anything bad. I decided to let Melanie use the data, even though I had no idea what she was up to. A week later, I started receiving furious phone calls from Max. After work, I answered one of his calls, and he sounded livid. What does this mean? What are you talking about? You knew everything, didn't you? About what? About Abby. Oh, yes, but which part are you referring to? The part where you and your son, Aaron, are both dating Abby? Or the part where Abby, the supposed CEO's daughter, is a lie? Max fell silent. It's really weird and disgusting that a father and son are both dating the same woman. Shut up, I got fired from my father's company. Well, of course, it's all your fault, and I can't even get in touch with Abby now. She got fired too, you know. Well, of course, she was involved with a married man while working, and she even embezzled money from the company. Why didn't you tell me? If I'd known, I would've. Who do you think you are? You're just some old man about to turn 60, and you can't even make a decent decision. What a shame. I don't feel anything for you anymore. I haven't since we got married. I ended the call and blocked Max's contact, but Aaron kept calling me nonstop that day too. Hi, Mom, Grandpa won't help me with my tuition fees. You deserve it. Ask your father. He gave all his money to Abby, now I can't even reach her. I couldn't help but laugh. Well, she's upset about the money she embezzled. She only sees her father as a money tree. You probably gave all the money you made from your part-time job to her too, right? You're such a jerk, Aaron, laughing while your own kid is in trouble. Yes, I'm a jerk, and I take half the blame for how you turned out, but I did you a favor by divorcing your father. Now pay for your tuition. If you're an adult, that's your responsibility. Yeah, it's my responsibility, but I'm your mother, and I'm not giving you any money. I hung up, but I didn't block Aaron's contact. I hoped that one day, after he reflected on everything, we might talk again. Later, I found out that Aaron had gotten a job and seemed to have left his father. My parents-in-law informed me that Max was missing. He had often gone to their house to ask for money, but now he had disappeared. I'm almost 60, and I want to live a healthy life from now on. Plus, my grandchild is on the way. My second life is just beginning. 20 years younger? Wow, the husband must be the real challenger. I can't believe he and his son were both seeing the same woman at the same time. They've both been caught by a gold digger. I hope he truly reflects on his actions, and the money they took from him was supposed to be for his tuition. Thanks for watching until the end. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.
Thanks for leaving, Olivia said with a sneer as she glanced at me. I just stared back silently. We're trying to save money on wages. We don't want someone who takes advantage of overtime pay in our company, Jerry added, looking satisfied. A week later, I kept receiving calls from the company. Hello, I answered. The president asked, who are you? I chuckled at his question. I'm Nicole Wallace. I'm 57 years old and I've worked here for 35 years since I graduated from college. Our company provides administrative support, handles social insurance and taxes for our clients, especially for busy company presidents who focus on sales and lack time for paperwork. I work in the tax department. I earned my bookkeeping and tax accountant qualifications in school, which led me to join this company. Currently, I manage 41 clients, keeping me quite busy. Even though a part-timer helps with accounting entries, it's still a lot to handle. But I can't show any weakness. Our clients are long-term relationships, many of whom have faced tough times. Seeing them persevere motivates me to keep going, so here I am again today, in front of my computer. Lately, I've been having a hard time. Jerry and Olivia have been bothering me a lot. Jerry, who's 6 years younger than me, is now the head of our tax department. He used to be just a regular colleague, but ever since he got promoted 5 months ago, his attitude completely changed. He used to speak politely, but now he's always sarcastic or complaining. Nicole, what are you doing? You've got some nerve slacking off during work hours, he'd say, glaring at me while I'm researching tax-saving strategies for our clients. When I tried to argue back, Jerry stayed calm and said, just check the manual for that. Don't do anything unnecessary, and if you end up working overtime, don't expect to get paid for it. I overheard Olivia, Jerry's assistant, saying, Nicole, you should work more efficiently. At this rate, you'll never finish. She laughed mockingly, adding, that's probably why you're still just a regular employee. I was actually the first one offered the promotion to head the department, but I turned it down. Being the head would mean more time managing and less time working directly with clients. Since it was an internal offer, Jerry and Olivia didn't know about it. I'll make sure to keep up with my regular duties, I managed to say. Despite everything, Jerry and Olivia kept harassing me. You're racking up overtime again. What a waste, Jerry's angry voice echoed today. Nicole, enough already. Your constant overtime is dragging down the whole tax department's performance, Olivia sighed. The reason for yesterday's overtime was simple. Jerry had let a month's worth of declaration forms pile up, all due by the end of the month. After work yesterday, he abruptly dumped several client files on my desk. My heart sank when I saw them. Wait, aren't these all due this month? I asked in confusion, but Jerry was already packing up. I'm leaving. Take care of these, he said briskly and hurried out of the office. Good luck, Olivia added, following Jerry with a mocking laugh. Unbelievable. I sighed as I opened the client files left on my desk. Some of them were supposed to be Olivia's responsibility. I sighed even deeper. I understood why Jerry was harassing me. They wanted me to retire quickly. I have more experience and deeper knowledge in taxation than him, so other members of the tax department often come to me with their questions instead of Jerry. There are other reasons why everyone avoids Jerry. He looks oily and unfriendly. The only female employee who stays close to him is Olivia. Jerry has a preference for younger women. That's probably why he wants me to retire, so the other female employees will rely on him more. It's such shallow thinking, it makes me uneasy. Also, he simply doesn't like me. Olivia was harassing me to gain favor with Jerry. Since Jerry evaluates the tax department's performance, she probably aimed to undermine me to get a good evaluation from him. Anyway, I have to handle these declarations. I need to prepare tax forms for my assigned companies, but it seems like I won't finish today's work either. If I try to claim overtime, I'll just get complaints from Jerry and Olivia, so I resigned myself to working unpaid overtime. One day I was suddenly summoned to the president's office. Our company had recently undergone a change in leadership. The founder's father, who had been running the company, had fallen ill, and his son, who previously worked elsewhere, took over despite being unfamiliar with our operations. Excuse me, I said as I entered the president's office. I noticed Jerry and Olivia there, both wearing unpleasant smirks. Why are Jerry and the others here? I muttered quietly, trying not to be heard. In this tense and strange atmosphere, the president spoke. Nicole, we need you to resign by the end of this month. Excuse me? What do you mean? I asked, feeling bewildered. I've been informed by Jerry and Olivia that you've been billing excessive overtime. While other members of the tax department have around 16 hours of overtime per month, you've logged over 83 hours. Doesn't that strike you as odd? Jerry and Olivia haven't logged any overtime this month. Quite impressive, don't you think? The president looked at me sternly. The reason my overtime was so high this month was because I was covering Jerry and Olivia's workload. I wanted to explain, but blaming Jerry could make it seem like I couldn't manage my time. So I stuck to the facts. I haven't overbilled for overtime. It's because I couldn't finish my work within regular hours, I clarified. The president sighed deeply. I'm skeptical, but without evidence, I won't pursue it further. However, we can't continue to employ someone who works at that pace, so I need you to resign. The president seemed resolute, asking me to leave the company where I'd dedicated my entire 35-year career. I felt worn out too. No matter how much extra work I took on, it never seemed to be acknowledged. Instead, I ended up shouldering Jerry and Olivia's responsibilities as well. Yes, I understand. I'll resign at the end of this month, I repeated to the president, realizing I had already agreed to it. I glanced at Jerry and Olivia. They were smiling smugly, clearly pleased with the outcome. After leaving the president's office with them, Olivia sneered at me, saying, "Thanks for quitting." I just stared back at her silently. Jerry echoed the sentiment, looking down on me as well. We're cutting labor costs. We don't need someone who takes advantage of overtime pay at our company, he added, seemingly pleased. As I watched them chat cheerfully, I began preparing handover documents for all my clients. It was important to ensure a smooth transition, so I made sure to personally say goodbye to those I was handing over to. I also tried to schedule a meeting with the president to bid farewell in person. For those I couldn't meet, I sent letters informing them of my successor. A week after resigning, I finally had a moment to relax at home. I had been swamped with handover tasks right up to my last day, and even before that, my workload had been heavy. A bit of relaxation seemed well-deserved. Just as I was thinking this, my phone rang. When I saw the call was from the company, I hesitated. I had already taken care of the social insurance procedures, so I ignored the first few calls. But they persisted, even calling from Jerry and Olivia's personal phones. Perhaps they hoped I would answer if it seemed urgent from the company. Eventually, feeling reluctant, I picked up. Hello. Nicole, it's chaotic here, the president said urgently. Who exactly are you? I chuckled bitterly. Who am I now? Just an unemployed woman. I've resigned from the company, so that's all I am at the moment. The president continued urgently. Since you left, we've had 55 calls to halt transactions with the company. Please come back immediately. With that, he abruptly hung up. He sounded genuinely panicked. It seemed I had no choice but to return. Reluctantly, I got up and headed back to the company. As soon as I arrived, Jerry and Olivia were waiting for me. Their faces were pale, and they had dark circles under their eyes. What's going on with both of you? I asked, surprised by their sudden change in appearance. Jerry glared at me and said sharply, since you left, we've been bombarded with calls to stop transactions. Not just from your clients, but from potential new clients we were about to onboard. What did you do? Olivia also eyed me suspiciously. I never imagined Nickel would stoop so low. I'm truly disappointed, Jerry remarked, his voice filled with disillusionment. The reason for their worn-out appearance was likely due to handling all the cancellations. I hadn't taken any actions against the clients, but I had a hunch why they were canceling their transactions. Well, these cancellations seem inevitable now, I muttered quietly. So you did do something, Jerry erupted. Get to the president's office immediately. He then hurried me along to the president's office, with Olivia following closely. President, I brought her, Jerry declared forcefully as he swung open the door, with Olivia entering hastily behind him. I've been waiting, the president said, fixing his gaze on me. Jerry accused me as if I were the culprit. It appears that Nickel was involved in the cancellation of transactions with our clients. We should not only have her resign but also consider legal action for damages, Olivia argued vehemently, choosing her words carefully in front of the president. The president ignored Jerry and Olivia's interruptions and turned to me again. Why did so many companies stop transactions after you left? I took a deep breath and replied firmly, it's simple. Our clients didn't just need basic tax management, they valued the personalized tax-saving strategies I'd offered. They could get cheaper services elsewhere, but they chose to stay with us because of the tailored approach I provided. Jerry snapped at me. Who do you think you are to talk like that to the president? Do you really believe you're that indispensable? Olivia taunted, that's absurd. It has to be Nickel's doing. The president's expression was serious. Jerry and Olivia focus on operating strictly by the book, optimizing efficiency. But Nickel's approach involves more than that. It's about offering custom strategies that benefit our clients individually. One-size-fits-all solutions don't always meet our clients' needs, which is why many valued Nickel's contributions and chose to remain with us. Jerry grew visibly frustrated. How can we justify spending so much time on each client's case? It's inefficient. Yeah, it's not practical, Olivia added emphatically. The president sighed deeply and revealed, actually, I just spoke with Dad, the former president. Some of the clients who stopped transactions went directly to him to discuss Nickel. I was taken aback by this unexpected turn. I hadn't realized the extent to which clients valued my contributions. Dad mentioned that the tax department thrived because of Nickel. She not only managed her own clients exceptionally well, but also supported her colleagues' clients, offering expertise that Jerry can't match. Dad also mentioned that if Nickel hadn't declined a promotion earlier, she would have been in a higher position than a department head by now, the president said with a troubled expression. No way, Olivia exclaimed, clearly shocked. It seemed she couldn't fathom the idea of me potentially being her superior. The president continued, his tone regretful. I deeply apologize for asking you to resign, Nickel. Can we rescind your resignation? You're indispensable to our company. I was genuinely pleased by the president's change of heart, but I hesitated to accept it. Before I could respond, Jerry interrupted forcefully. President, what do you mean she's better than me? I can't accept this. Jerry was visibly upset, his voice betraying his frustration. Olivia joined in, protesting. Jerry is an excellent leader who genuinely cares for his team. Are you really favoring Nickel over him? That's unfair. The president fixed a stern look on them both. In fact, since Nickel resigned, we've been receiving numerous complaints from the tax department. It seems that both of you have been offloading your responsibilities onto others, haven't you? What? That's not true. Jerry's face paled, his denial immediate. The president spoke with a look of disappointment. I've heard from the staff. Jerry, you've been delegating the preparation of your clients' declaration forms to your subordinates, even assigning Olivia's workload to them for many clients. Beside Jerry, who grew visibly paler, Olivia trembled when her name was brought up. There have been reports that you shifted your responsibilities onto Nickel before she resigned. Jerry, you even called her a time thief. It seems the roles have been reversed, haven't they? The president sighed heavily. No, that's not true, Jerry stammered, clearly flustered and unable to defend himself. Watching Jerry and Olivia both turn pale, the president continued sternly, furthermore, there have been reports of a relationship between you two. You've been seen leaving work together frequently. But Jerry, aren't you married? The president's glare intensified as he looked at Jerry and Olivia. I was simply mentoring Olivia in my role as her superior, nothing more, Jerry struggled to explain, but the president produced several receipts. These are expense receipts flagged by the accounting department, dining expenses claimed by Jerry. Who were these meals with? Certainly not clients, right? Jerry was sweating profusely, unable to answer. Olivia's face turned ashen. Jerry and Olivia, not only have you neglected your responsibilities and inflated expense claims, but you've also engaged in an inappropriate relationship within the office, despite being married. "According to company policy, I am terminating your employment effective immediately," the president stated calmly and decisively. Jerry and Olivia pleaded desperately. "Please wait. I'll retract the expense claims, just don't fire me." "I have a family," Jerry begged, trying to reverse his termination. Olivia echoed his plea. "Please, I don't want to lose my job. I'll apologize to Nicole and others for dumping work on them." Olivia was visibly on the brink of tears, realizing the gravity of being fired for neglecting her duties and having an affair with a superior. She must have been deeply concerned about her reputation. Trying to offer some advice, I said to Jerry and Olivia, "Why continue to resist? It's not helping your situation." Jerry shot me a glare. "Shut up? What could someone like you possibly understand?" I sighed and replied, "Jerry, it was your actions that led to my resignation. It's just karma. What goes around comes around. Perhaps it's time for you to take responsibility and do some self-reflection." "Damn it," Jerry exclaimed in frustration, while Olivia bit her lip anxiously. "I haven't disclosed everything yet, but there's more to Jerry and Olivia's misconduct. Should I share more details?" I asked the president with a wry smile. The stories of Jerry and Olivia's behavior were widely known in the tax department, and their reputations had preceded them. "No, please don't. Nicole, please stop," they both pleaded urgently, trying to halt me. Giving them a firm ultimatum, I said, "Misdeeds have a way of surfacing eventually. It might be in your best interest to confront reality before it escalates further." At my words, both Jerry and Olivia fell to their knees. The president wasted no time and terminated their employment on the spot. Later, I disclosed their wrongdoings, which included Jerry fabricating business trips to spend time with Olivia for days, as well as pressuring disliked colleagues to resign by unfairly reprimanding them and imposing sudden, unreasonable deadlines. Former employees who had resigned had asked me to keep quiet initially, but now that they were happily employed elsewhere, I felt it was appropriate to speak up. The president was incensed by the revelations. He expressed his anger by docking their final salaries and announced plans to conduct a thorough investigation into past inflated expense claims. Tearfully, Jerry pleaded with the president, "Please don't dock my salary. What will I say to my family?" Eventually, Jerry's affair with Olivia came to light to his wife, resulting in their divorce. Both now faced claims for compensation in the divorce proceedings. For some reason, Jerry reached out to me, pleading, "Please, can you convince the president to reconsider the termination? Olivia and I are in serious trouble now." Jerry and Olivia were having a hard time finding new jobs because the tax industry is tight-knit. If you mess up, everyone hears about it, and that makes it tough to get hired elsewhere. They really need money for their divorce settlement and living expenses, so they're doing manual labor on construction sites now. It's a big change from their usual office work. Olivia calls me crying often, saying, "Nicole, please help. I just wanted a raise and a better life," she would say tearfully, "but I couldn't bring myself to help. I still vividly remembered the stress and problems they caused me." I would say to Olivia, "You made your choices, now you have to deal with them," I explained. "You can't expect sympathy when you never showed any to others." "But it's so tough," Olivia would cry. "I never thought it would turn out like this." "Actions have consequences," I replied. "You and Jerry brought this upon yourselves. You can't undo it now. You have to face the consequences of your actions." Olivia's despairing cries were the consequences of her own decisions. It was a tough lesson, but one she needed to learn. Meanwhile, I found solace in my new routine. Working at my friend's tax office was fulfilling. I enjoyed the work and the positive environment, unlike the toxic atmosphere Jerry and Olivia had created. The president's requests for my return became more frequent. "Please come back, Nicole, we really need you," he would urge. Each time I would politely decline, saying, "I'm sorry, but I've moved on." I appreciate the offer, though. Every day, starting my own office seemed like a clearer goal. In my own space, I could make the rules. No more unfair treatment or office politics. My focus would be on giving my clients the best service, building relationships based on trust and respect. In this new phase of my life, I finally felt at ease. I felt lighter, free from the burdens of the past. My days had purpose, and my nights were calm, without the anxiety that used to bother me. Looking ahead, I saw endless opportunities. I could learn more, face new challenges, and create something from scratch. My second chance was just beginning, and I was eager for what lay ahead. Freed from the negativity of my old job, I embraced the opportunities ahead with enthusiasm. As I planned my new business, I recalled the support and trust my clients had shown me. They were my motivation to stay in this field. Their faith in my abilities formed the bedrock of my new venture. With them in mind, I felt confident in my future success. Though my journey had been challenging, it had also made me resilient. Strengthened by my experiences, I was prepared to turn the page and embark on a new chapter with renewed vigor and a clear vision. Ultimately, Olivia and Jerry's setbacks serve as a stark reminder of the importance of integrity and respect in the workplace. Their story underscored my commitment to fostering a positive and supportive environment in my own office. Moving forward, I carried the knowledge that I could overcome any obstacle. My determination and resilience had brought me this far and would continue to guide me in the future. My second chance wasn't just a continuation of the past, it was a fresh start filled with promise and potential.
I've officially transferred the ownership of our house to my parents, and we're contemplating divorce. James, with a cold demeanor, pointed at me and callously insisted that I leave the house. He unleashed a stream of insults, supported by his parents' cheerful smiles, who seemed to silently endorse his actions. Nevertheless, I remained unfazed by their words, calmly accepting the decision to leave. Inside me, a well-thought-out plan accompanied the luggage I had prepared in advance. Hand in hand, I departed from the house without hesitation. They were oblivious to the gravity of the situation awaiting them. My name is Sally, just turned 50. Many years have passed since our marriage. Our children are now independent, leading lives away from us. I used to live the life of an ordinary salaried worker, but now, thanks to a friend's introduction, I spend my days as a teacher of handmade accessories, a hobby turned profession. This new job has become a turning point in my life, bringing fulfillment through interactions with my students and the joy of crafting every day. Some might have negative opinions about turning a hobby into a livelihood, but I am content. James and I met by chance at the company where I used to work. He was employed at a client company at the time, and as we started to meet often through work-related social gatherings, our relationship deepened. Eventually, we chose to marry out of love. After 3 years of marriage, our family was blessed with a healthy and energetic boy. He graduated from a well-known university and is now happily married, living a prosperous life. However, despite our son's success, the relationship between James and me became increasingly difficult to find joy in. Over the years, James underwent a transformation, displaying changes in behavior. The once gentle and considerate James became demanding, treating me like nothing more than a housemaid. His daily changing demands and preferences became a source of trouble for me. Lately, James has been easily angered, blaming me for trivial things, and instances of verbal abuse have been on the rise. I've been wanting to escape this life and start anew, but I'm tied down by an unpaid mortgage. Despite this, James quit his job without a clear reason and now spends his days lazing around the house. He hardly lifts a finger to help with daily chores, leaving me to manage everything on my own. The house we live in was recently rebuilt, and I funded it all. Managing the finances, I saved bit by bit for its reconstruction. It embodies my wishes and aspirations, a house I worked hard to build. I don't want it to fall into James's hands if I leave. Beyond the mortgage issue, this house symbolizes my dreams, with features like the spacious kitchen area reflecting my careful choices. Despite initial input from James on the house's design, I covered all the costs and wanted my wishes to be respected. Despite facing challenges, the house, with all its desired features, eventually became a reality, fulfilling our dream. I experienced a profound sense of joy about the reality of our new home. However, the cost of construction significantly surpassed our initial estimates, compelling us to take on a much larger loan than anticipated. Accepting such a substantial loan in our 50s was unexpected, but the prospect of the happiness our new home promised provided us with the energy to overcome this financial burden. On the flip side, James appeared somewhat sulky, as his opinions and wishes were not well reflected in the house design. He expressed discontent, considering it unnecessary and akin to throwing money down the drain. Ignoring his complaints and grumbles, I pressed on. Gradually, he stopped talking to me and began resorting to childish behaviors, such as scattering trash and leaving things disorganized to provoke irritation. I wondered when this situation, this life, would come to an end, pondering these thoughts every day. A few months had passed since we moved into the new house when suddenly the doorbell rang. We weren't expecting any visitors that day, leaving me curious about who it might be. As I prepared to go to the front door, James, surprisingly, got up and headed there before me, possibly aware of the visitor's identity. After a while, cheerful voices and laughter emanated from the entrance. When the door to the living room slowly opened, revealing the visitors, I saw the faces of my unexpected in-laws, Harold and Alice. Honestly, I always felt pressure in my relationship with them. When we first announced our marriage, they treated me coldly, criticized me for my lower social status, and maintained an awkward attitude even on our wedding day. Their interference continued post-marriage, and each time I interacted with them, I wondered how to handle the situation. Despite thinking there had been some change or settling down due to lack of contact, their sudden visit surprised me. Greeting them politely, I felt a slight tension, but they passed by me without a word, intentionally ignoring my presence and bumping into my shoulder. They marveled at the house, expressing envy at the spacious and user-friendly kitchen. James proudly showcased the house to his in-laws, and upon their return, the expressions on their faces seemed satisfied. However, James' expression turned stern, and he suddenly raised his voice in anger towards me, instructing me to hurry up and prepare tea and snacks. Overwhelmed by his words, I hastily prepared tea and served snacks, but his parents seemed dissatisfied, commenting on the hospitality. Despite my efforts, Harold expressed dissatisfaction, and as they quickly finished the snacks and tea, he commented appreciatively on the house's interior. James, with a broad smile, invited his parents to live together in the house, almost ignoring my presence. They listened to James's words and left, leaving me watching their retreating figures. I felt a significant gap between James and me, witnessing him chatting and laughing joyfully with his parents, something I hadn't seen in a long time. Subsequently, in response to James' invitation, his parents began visiting our house more frequently. Initially, it was a few times a month, but it gradually increased to several times a week, eventually becoming almost daily. However, their criticisms towards me never ceased, and James showed no signs of curbing them. James' attitude of blaming me, coupled with his parents' intensified disapproval, became more pronounced. His complaints about me not listening and causing our son suffering were relentless. Despite facing daily difficulties, I found myself unable to voice the frustration in my heart. All I could do was offer words of apology. The in-laws' visits increased beyond anticipation, and they started visiting even more frequently during my absence. They would come along with James, leaving clear evidence of their activities at home: scattered beer cans, empty bottles, and traces of spilled alcohol that seeped into our new rug. Despite my protests, the new house began to smell of alcohol and felt dirty. I couldn't understand why, despite not contributing to the household, James was quick to complain. His involvement in gambling added another layer of worry, as remnants of used betting slips surfaced regularly. Explaining the risks of gambling and its impact on our finances seemed futile. The losses were a significant blow, especially since the money used for gambling was hard-earned through my tireless work. Nearly a month into the frequent visits from the in-laws, they targeted the times when I was out. One day, returning home early, I found them leisurely spending time in our house. Surprised, I confronted them, but their snarky words and indifferent attitude made it clear that they considered my presence bothersome. Frustrated and stressed by the insolent attitudes of James and his parents, I realized I had reached my limit. Instead of succumbing to emotions, I decided it was time to devise a plan to address the situation. Amidst this turmoil, an unusual event occurred. During a time when I was supposed to be away, the in-laws visited unexpectedly, expressing surprise at their unusual timing. I sarcastically commented on their avoidance of my presence. Ignoring my remark, they boldly entered the house. James welcomed them with a smile, leading them to inspect various areas, from the kitchen to the bathroom. Observing their meticulous checks, I sensed a hidden agenda behind their actions. Even as they left, they wore satisfied expressions, as if they had confirmed something. Curious and wary, I questioned their inspections and wondered if there was something they should tell me. I had cautioned James not to worry, emphasizing that it was none of his business. His behavior, however, hinted at concealing something from me. I suspected he was trying to manipulate me cunningly, but grasping the real intention proved challenging. Observing the situation became my only option. Then, one day after work, I returned home to find a large moving truck parked in front of our house, bearing the logo of a company named Moving Center. James appeared to be in discussions with the truck driver and representatives. When our eyes met, he pretended not to see me and disappeared inside the house. What shocked me more was the simultaneous arrival of my in-laws. They greeted me casually, and James welcomed them, leading them into the house. The atmosphere felt tense, and as I followed them inside, I noticed a significant change. The familiar furniture and belongings I knew had vanished, replaced by my in-laws' dated furniture, arranged as if this were their home. As I sat down on the sofa, they surrounded me with smirky smiles, conveying a sense of smugness. Their behavior indicated a pre-planned action, and though anxious, I decided to quietly wait and see what would unfold. The somewhat hurried gazes of my in-laws added to the atmosphere. They declared that there was something they needed to tell me, hinting at a hidden agenda. Bracing myself, I responded with feigned calmness, and James sighed deeply before admitting that he had sold the house to his parents. He proposed getting a divorce, and my in-laws nodded in agreement. Their smirky smiles suggested they were trying to toy with me. Despite the revelation, I remained unfazed, having anticipated their plan. I promptly signed the divorce papers, placed my wedding ring on the table, and declared my intention to leave the house. I had suspicions about the unnatural behaviors of James and my in-laws, especially since their frequent visits when I wasn't home. To confirm my suspicions, I installed surveillance cameras around the house, synced with my smartphone. On the first day, I observed their daily conversations. However, one day, I stumbled upon footage where James and his parents joyfully discussed selling the house. Shocked by this revelation, I decided to plan my next steps, searching for a new residence based on the information obtained from the surveillance cameras. I took the initiative to transfer the home loan from my name to James's. If they planned to remove me from our home, I believed they should take over the mortgage payments and responsibilities. The monthly mortgage, amounting to $1,900, was paid from my hard-earned salary. Doubting that James and his parents could afford this, I resolved not to provide any financial assistance. Free from the troublesome relationship, I moved to my new, well-arranged home with new furniture, ready to embark on a new chapter in my life. On my day off, I relished the prospect of thorough rest, sleeping in past noon. As I was about to doze off again, the doorbell abruptly rang. To my surprise, James and his in-laws stood at my doorstep, uninvited. I questioned their presence, and without answering, they intruded into my house, spreading out a document in front of me. They accused me of changing the name on the house loan without permission. Expressing disbelief at their sudden appearance, I learned that right after leaving the house, they received documents about the loan name change. James and his parents were shocked, claiming they were currently unemployed and couldn't afford the high monthly loan. In a furious outburst, James declared they wouldn't pay that amount. Attempting to enlighten them on the consequences of defaulting, I explained how interest and late fees could significantly increase the final payment. James initially seemed skeptical, but after searching for information online, his expression turned to one of shock and distress. I recommended looking for new employment for a fresh start. Their faces grew even paler as they realized the seriousness of the situation. They admitted to having no savings or assets, with James burdened by substantial gambling debts and no stable income. Frustrated, they pleaded for understanding and assistance, emphasizing the years they spent together. Unmoved by their pleas, I shut the door to escape their attempts to mend the relationship. Frustrated, they reported me to the police, leading to their removal from my property. Eventually, Due to financial constraints, they relocated to a more affordable apartment on the outskirts of town. James secured a part-time job, supporting his family with that income. Meanwhile, my life remained unchanged, and I focused on my job. In my free time, I started a blog on handmade crafts, gaining attention and doubling my monthly income. Requests for me to serve as an instructor for workshops and courses increased. I had no thoughts of remarrying and planned to navigate life independently. Discovering an old household account book from the early days of my marriage brought back memories of our financial struggles. With a sense of resolve, I decided to build a new happiness on my own, placing the account book back on the shelf.
See, it's clear now. All the money goes to your brother, as stated in the will. No need to doubt it, said the person in charge of the will. What? Are we really allowed to take all this money? My husband asked, looking at me and my happy sister-in-law. The will says that my brother gets the whole $100 million inheritance from our father. I feel really sad reading it. Does this mean I've lost everything and have to stay with this terrible man forever? But then, my brother says one thing that changes everything. My name is Catherine. I'm 55 years old, and I'm a housewife. My husband's name is Robert, and we've been together without any children. Robert is what you might call a typical male chauvinist. Ever since we got married, he's been in charge, and I haven't been able to speak up or share my opinions. Robert is 10 years older than me. He doesn't treat me with any respect. I feel like I'm his servant, always doing household chores. And if I do something he doesn't like, he's quick to criticize me. He even blames me for us not having children, which makes me cry almost every day. I've thought about divorcing him, but I don't want to worry my family, and I don't have the money to support myself. So I've been enduring his mistreatment and trying to stay strong despite his hurtful words. The only person who gave me any emotional support was my father. My father used to be a successful businessman. He built a company from nothing and turned it into a big company. Even though he worked a lot, he cared for my brother and me in his own way. But after my mother died in a car accident shortly after I got married, my father threw himself into work even more, maybe to distract himself from the loneliness. It was clear that my father's excessive work had taken a toll on him. He had a stroke and had to go to the hospital. Thankfully, his life wasn't in danger, but he was paralyzed on his left side. This was the cost of pushing himself too hard for so long. I managed to convince him to retire. I was worried about him being alone, so I convinced my husband, and we moved in with my father. Once he stopped working, my father seemed to age quickly. He started showing signs of dementia and soon became bedridden and needed constant care. Taking care of my father on top of everything else was overwhelming. I had to handle the housework, look after my husband, and now take care of my father, who had dementia. Sometimes he would be quiet, but other times he would yell and move around a lot, especially at night, or he would wander off. I was always tired from lack of sleep, stress, and the constant work. But sometimes my father would have moments of clarity, and we could talk peacefully like we used to. He would often thank me and sadly smile, saying, "I want to leave you with as much as I can." After 3 years of taking care of my father, he passed away. While I felt relief from the burden of caring for him, losing my father, who was my only emotional support, left me feeling incredibly lonely and sad. My only hope now was my father's inheritance. The inheritance amounted to $100 million, which would be split evenly between my brother and me, making it $50 million for each of us. With that much money, I could finally escape from my awful husband. It was my only chance for a better life. A few days later, my husband Robert and our eldest son's wife Naomi called me to discuss the inheritance. My brother, Naomi's husband, had been working overseas for a while. He came back for the funeral but had just left again yesterday, so Naomi was there in his place. "We found your dad's will in the back of a drawer. Luckily, it wasn't sealed. So let's take a look at it right away," Naomi said. "A will? I didn't know there was one. I was taking care of my father every day, but I never saw him writing a will. It bothered me that my husband, who didn't care much for my father, knew about it. I felt uneasy and had a bad feeling, Catherine thought. Let's read it, Robert suggested. All of my assets will be inherited by my eldest son Ken, dated April 1st, John Smith. Naomi read aloud. That's it? Catherine couldn't believe what she was hearing. She always thought her father's estate would be split equally between her and her brother. It was hard to believe that all of her father's $100 million estate would go only to her brother. Well, hold on a second. That doesn't make sense. Why would it be like that? Catherine questioned. My husband handed me the will and urged me to look at myself as I started to panic. Sure enough, it was written in the will, with my father's signature. I immediately suspected that the will might be fake. My father had always been fair to both my brother and me, and he wouldn't have favored just one of us. But could my kind and honest brother really keep all the inheritance for himself? As I pondered this, my brother's wife burst into laughter. Wow, we get to keep all of his money. It feels a bit wrong, but if that's what he wanted, we have to respect it, right? She said. I couldn't accept this at all. As I held the will silently, both my husband and my brother's wife glared at me. Hey, are you doubting this? If so, you can bring in a handwriting expert or something. Just because it's inconvenient for you doesn't mean you can start doubting it. You really have a bad attitude, my husband scolded. I'll do that, Catherine murmured quietly, deciding to have the will checked by an expert. To my surprise, the results showed that the will was undoubtedly written by my father himself. I was disappointed and fell into despair, thinking about the past. I had spent my life taking care of my husband and my father, enduring my husband's anger and hurtful words. It was painful, but the time I spent with my father was happy. I believe he cared for me too. The thought that my beloved father didn't care about me was more shocking and unbearable than not receiving the inheritance. I might have to leave this familiar house and land because they are part of my father's estate. My hope of divorcing my husband also seemed impossible now. When I told my husband about the appraisal result of the will at home over the weekend, he sneered at me with a self-righteous face. That settles it. All the inheritance goes to your brother. Don't go meddling in things anymore. The will was real. Always doubting, you worthless wife, he said, leaving the house after saying those words. Lately, my husband has been spending a lot of time away from home. He comes home from work very late, and he's often not home on weekends like this. I found it suspicious, but I tried to avoid seeing my husband as much as possible. Surprisingly, I felt relieved. Despite my husband's objections, I wanted to talk to my brother directly about the inheritance. Even though he worked overseas and was always busy, he was a kind and dependable person. I made sure beforehand that he wasn't too busy, then I gave him a call. After exchanging some brief greetings, my brother once again apologized for leaving the care of our father entirely to me and thanked me for handling the funeral and various procedures. Don't worry about it. By the way, Robert, about Dad's inheritance, was it always decided that you would be the sole heir? I tried to ask casually. It was hard to bear the thought that maybe I wasn't loved by my father, but I wanted to discuss it properly. Huh? What do you mean? All of the inheritance goes to me, my brother sounded surprised. I thought Naomi had told him, but it seems he was hearing about it for the first time, but the will was genuine, so the result wouldn't change. I explained the situation to my brother. I see. So the handwriting on the will is definitely Dad's, and that's all it said, huh? Got it. I'll need some time to think this through. I'll get back to you. I'll also make sure Naomi doesn't do anything until I've made a decision, my brother said before ending the call. I waited patiently for my brother's next move, feeling both intrigued and hopeful. A few days later, my brother contacted me again. He suggested that I look into Naomi's suspicious activities by hiring a private investigator. He also advised me to claim my rightful share from him. This legitimate share is the minimum amount of inheritance guaranteed to a family member, based on their position in the family. In my case, I could claim a portion from my father's $25 million inheritance. Even though the will said all the inheritance should go to my brother, this legal provision would still entitle me to inherit $25 million. However, my husband and my brother's wife were not happy with my decision. The decision has already been made. Don't mess it up now, they protested. But there was more to my brother's advice. I'm not asking for the $25 million. All I want is this house filled with memories of our father and the land. The total estate is worth $100 million. but the real estate property is only worth $10 million. I'll give up all the rest of the inheritance to my brother. Still, the two of them continue to argue. If this continues to escalate, my brother has instructed me to hire a lawyer to join the discussion. If it comes to that, I'm sure I'll inherit $25 million exactly, I asserted confidently. My husband and Naomi fell silent. Eventually, it seemed like they realized it was more beneficial to settle for the $10 million worth of real estate. We finally reached an agreement on how to divide the inheritance. A few days later, I received the results of an investigation I had requested about Naomi from a private investigator. I immediately contacted my brother. After many ups and downs, we successfully completed the process of inheriting our father's estate. My brother Ken rushed from abroad to help during the process. I inherited the family home and land, valued at $10 million. My brother inherited the rest of the estate, which amounted to $90 million. Naomi and my husband seemed pleased with how things were going as they had hoped. After finishing the inheritance process, the four of us left the law office and went back to our father's house. While enjoying a cup of tea in the living room, my brother spoke up, placing his smartphone on the table. "Great job, everyone. Now that we successfully inherited Dad's estate, there's something I want to discuss," he said with a smile. With that, he took out a document from his pocket and laid it out on the table. The expressions on my husband's and Naomi's faces turned pale as they read the contents. The document was titled, "It's a Will." At the end of it, there was my father's signature and stamp, dating back about 5 years ago. "This is a will that Dad gave to me when he was still working. It was made with 2 witnesses at a notary office, so it's legally valid," my brother explained. He continued, saying that our father had prepared it before he had a stroke. With his wife already passed away, he wanted to ensure his children would be taken care of if anything happened to him. The will stated that 1/4 of the total estate was to go to Ken, who already had a significant amount of wealth, and 3/4 to Catherine, the housewife. My brother gently held the will, explaining that our father had been clear about not changing it. He had stated in the will that any changes must have a reason stated, otherwise they would be considered invalid. It seemed our father, knowing the size of his estate, had prepared early to avoid any family conflicts. He was really pushing himself at work. I think he was considering all sorts of things, like what would happen if he fell gravely ill or became senile. My brother said, his hand caressing the will. The will also contained a heartfelt addendum. "I hope that there will be no conflicts over the inheritance and that the family will continue to live happily together." It was filled with our father's warm wishes for the family. Learning that I was loved by my father just as much as my brother touched me deeply, and my heart swelled with emotion. However, my husband and Naomi beside me grew pale. "So, if you're going to change this will, the reason has to be stated, or it's all null and void. Even if it's in my dad's handwriting, maybe he was forced to write it when he was in a delirious state due to dementia." My husband suddenly slammed the table with a fierce expression. He glared at my brother and growled, "Hey Ken, do you have any proof? Are you calling me a criminal?" "I never said you forged the will, did I, Robert?" My brother replied calmly, then glanced at his wife Naomi sitting next to him. Naomi remained silent, which struck me as odd. Naomi had informed me about our father's passing, and I had attended the funeral. However, after returning abroad, I hadn't been informed about anything regarding the inheritance, despite it involving me. My brother seemed to be looking to his wife Naomi for some reason, but she still said nothing. "Stop your arguing. The inheritance is already decided. The $90 million is ours. It doesn't matter what you say now," my husband shouted back. "What do you mean by ours? I'm the one who inherited it," my brother countered calmly. "Shut up," my husband snapped. The conversation was going in circles. "I'm not sure what you mean, but the $90 million I inherited is just worthless paper," my brother said calmly. "What?" my husband exclaimed, surprised. My brother explained patiently. "Our father's estate was valued at $100 million. Apart from the real estate, all the assets were stocks in our father's company. When our father was in charge, the company was doing well, and the stocks were valuable. But after he stepped down, the company started losing money, and it looked like it might go bankrupt. In the 3 years before he died, the stocks that were once worth over $90 million became practically worthless." But that can't be true, can it?" my husband stammered. "It's the truth. I inherited knowing that. I plan on restructuring my father's company, and since it didn't involve you, I didn't tell you, my brother explained. My husband seemed shaken and muttered to himself. He couldn't seem to accept the reality of the situation. That's when Naomi finally spoke up for the first time. Hold on, wait a minute. What are you saying? Are you saying I inherited worthless stocks while Catherine got $10 million? That's not fair, Naomi exclaimed loudly. Beside Naomi's outburst, my brother sighed. Naomi, I inherited our father's estate. You weren't at a disadvantage in any way. Why are you so upset? But I thought we were getting all of that $100 million. I had plans for it. My husband glared sharply at the flustered Naomi. So you and Robert were plotting to get all of our father's money, and while doing that, you were having an affair, weren't you? My brother accused. Naomi and my husband remained silent, frozen in place. Why? Naomi muttered hoarsely. My brother glanced at her before continuing. After our phone call, I started suspecting Naomi. Why didn't she talk to me about the inheritance? Why had her interactions with me been so brief lately, and why had she started ignoring my calls? I thought something was fishy, and when I saw her pictures on social media, I knew she was cheating on me. And soon, I'll be getting a lot of money. I'll be living like a famous person. I've been discussing with my girlfriend how we'll spend it. She said we'll have a blast when we get the money. I'm thrilled. But Naomi, I don't recall talking about this with you. I wonder who this girlfriend is. No, wait. You're misunderstanding, Naomi interrupted. Ignoring his confused wife, my brother brought out a bait envelope. He took some photos out and placed them next to the will. They showed Naomi and Robert going into a hotel together, looking very close. It was obvious they were in a tight relationship. I've been overseas, you know. I hired a private investigator to look into things because I was curious about your girlfriend, my brother said, showing the solid proof. Naomi started trembling. Looking at Naomi's affair partner, my husband, I noticed he was furious, completely red-faced, which was quite different from the pale Naomi. Curse you, poking around like some creep. What's all this nonsense about your silly will in these photos? It's absurd. My husband exploded. Stop. Suddenly, Naomi raised her voice. She approached my brother with a fake charm, like a bad actor. Hey, you're mistaken. It's all a mix-up. It's all Robert's fault. He convinced me that if I went along with him, I'd get all of your dad's money. Hey, wouldn't you want to get $100 million? I thought it was for your own good. My husband, who felt deeply hurt, stared at Naomi in shock. This photo, we were just fooling around. You were always away, and I felt lonely. But you're also to blame, right? Please forgive me. The $90 million is off the table now. Let's take the $10 million from Catherine's property. Did you fake the will? I asked. Huh? No way. Robert did it. He said it was simple and had it written by your dad. Look, it's not my fault, Naomi explained. When the truth about the fake will came out, my husband got furious and tried to attack Naomi, but my brother stepped in quickly. You jerks. You've got nothing on me. You'll pay for this in hell. My husband yelled, kicking a chair. While he raged, my brother calmly watched and casually took out his phone. Oh, looks like my phone was recording the whole time since we got home. I forgot to turn it off. My husband went pale and fell silent. By the way, I didn't mention it earlier, but this room has security cameras that record everything. I installed them because of Dad's bad memory, just in case something happened, my brother added. In the quiet room, only my brother kept speaking. Forging a will is a serious crime. Your earlier threat could get you in legal trouble. There's a police station nearby, and they'd be here soon if we report it. But since the inheritance matter is settled now, and if you promise not to touch Catherine's things again, maybe we don't need to involve the police. What do you say? While saying this, my brother began using his phone. I might as well send this recording to my computer overseas. After silently watching everything, I pulled a document from my bag and handed it to my husband. Robert, I want a divorce. Wait, hold on. Think about this. I'm sorry. We've been together for so long, haven't we? Who do you think has been providing for you all this time? My husband pleaded. I've had it. No more excuses. Either agree to the divorce or I'm calling the police, I said firmly, gripping my smartphone tightly with a determined expression. Robert slumped his shoulders and nodded. Naomi, it's over between us. You were planning to take the money and be with Ken, weren't you? I heard your conversations with him from a private investigator, I accused. Naomi hung her head, covering her face with her hands. After our divorces, my brother and I went our separate ways. Robert moved out of the house, thinking he had secured a significant inheritance, only to find out it was worthless. Naomi revealed the truth about the forged will, and everything that unfolded in the living room was captured on camera. Robert must have been furious, but he was powerless. The surveillance camera, initially installed for my father's care, also documented evidence of Robert's emotional abuse. Even if I had inherited my father's assets, I planned to use them as evidence in a divorce trial if Robert resisted. When I shared this with my brother, he suggested we utilize the camera too. After the divorce, rumors of Robert's affairs spread at his workplace, leading to him losing his job. His colleagues had seen him frequenting hotels with a woman who wasn't his wife. With his parents gone and now jobless and homeless, Robert vanished. While I had sought a portion of his assets, I wanted nothing more to do with him, especially after inheriting some wealth. Naomi, the woman Robert cheated with, faced the same downfall as him. Despite pleading, I don't want us to end. Please don't leave me. During the divorce proceedings with my brother Ken, the divorce was finalized when solid evidence was presented during mediation. Naomi had been spending recklessly while Robert was absent, but she was stuck with the bills, leaving her with nothing. Since she hadn't been working and had no home to go back to like Robert, she's now struggling to get by in a rundown public housing project, relying on welfare. Meanwhile, my brother Ken continues to work overseas, but he's selling the house he shared with Naomi and will be moving in with me into our father's house. With Ken's financial help, my life has become more stable, and I've been able to live comfortably. The value of the land left by my father has been steadily increasing, now worth over $100 million. Free from the responsibilities of caring for my dad and the emotional abuse from my ex-husband, I'm finally living a peaceful life, with time for myself. Alone in a spacious house, I started to think about how to make the most of it. Around that time, I watched a TV show about foreign exchange students staying with host families, and it gave me an idea. I decided to open up my spare rooms for rent. I offer affordable rooms to college and exchange students, and now my house is bustling with life. We share meals, play games, and help each other with schoolwork. It feels like we're one big happy family. On days when I have some free time, I enjoy reading books at the local library. Since I don't have kids of my own, and my marriage had drifted apart, I used to worry about being lonely after losing my father. But now, my days are filled with energy and joy. Even at my age, it's fulfilling to connect with young people and give back to the community in my own small way. There were times when life seemed too hard to handle, but now I have my brother, my roommates, and the people in my neighborhood to share life with. Every day is filled with contentment and happiness. I'm grateful for the simple joy I've found.
Hey everyone, I'm Claire, and I want to share a chapter of my life that revolves around challenging relationships with my in-laws and husband. Currently navigating the complexities of a divorce, I thought it might resonate with those of you who've experienced unwarranted criticism from your in-laws. Let me take you back to how it all began. I met Zane, my now estranged husband, on a dating site when I was a 19-year-old college student. Zane, at 25, had a stable job. Despite the age gap, love blossomed between us. I've never been one to judge based on age or appearance, so Zane's age was never a concern for me. However, Zane struggled with our age difference. He often questioned, "Why are you with me, Claire? I don't understand. I'm so much older than you. You could find someone your own age who's better suited for you." Yes, I could, but I don't want to. I fell in love with you, and age doesn't matter to me. Zane, burdened by insecurities, persisted. "There must be other reasons, Claire. It's not natural for someone like you to love someone like me. I wish you'd tell me the truth." I am telling you the truth. I don't want to date boys my age. I love you, and that's all that matters to me. Despite my assurances, Zane struggled to believe me, revealing deep-seated self-esteem issues that may have contributed to his single status. Determined to prove the authenticity of my feelings, I embarked on a journey to demonstrate the depth of my love for him. Throughout our entire relationship, I refrained from letting Zayn spend money on me. While I wasn't a broke college student, I wasn't rolling in wealth either. Despite my financial constraints, I made sure to buy him gifts and cover my own expenses each time. I held a modest job, so I wasn't destitute. Zayn seemed to appreciate these gestures. Regrettably, Zayn's low self-esteem persisted, and he continued to doubt the authenticity of my love. Despite my best efforts to be supportive and understanding, his mistrust shattered my heart. It wasn't until the first 2 years had passed that I discovered the root of Zayn's self-esteem issues. Meeting his parents, Michael and Molly, shed light on his struggles. Michael, Zayn's father, had experienced a stroke of luck, winning the lottery and dramatically improving their lives. They purchased an extravagant house and secured their future with the remaining funds. However, Michael and Molly carried an air of superiority. During our initial encounter, Michael boasted, "Not everyone can make it big like me. I was a hard-working man, and look where it got me. Do you know how uncommon it is to win a huge lottery? The chances are very low, but I did it on the first try." They took pride in their decision-making skills, insinuating that Zayn, despite completing college, would never match their financial success. Molly hinted that Zayn's previous partners were gold diggers, leaving as soon as their financial situation improved. The couple openly questioned Zayn's ability to make sound choices. This attitude infuriated me. Zayn's parents indirectly accused every girl he dated of being interested only in his money. Over time, Zayn internalized these beliefs, contributing to his insecurities. The insinuation that I, too, was a gold digger became a humiliating part of the narrative. Fed up with the unjust assumptions, I decided to defend both Zayn and myself. I declared, "I'm sorry, but I have to disagree with you. Zayn has worked hard to establish himself in his career, and with time, he will achieve even greater success." Michael rebutted, "Well, that doesn't change the fact that women only want him for money. The money we have is ours, but Zayn does co-own the house. Ultimately, it will be his when we pass. Let me tell you, every time they see our $200,000 house, I swear these girls see dollar signs in their eyes." I can't vouch for Zayn's past relationships, but I'm certainly not in this for the money. I love your son, and that's the reason we're together. I have no interest in your house. Don't worry, Claire. Sometimes it's challenging to accept that people can be successful and live in nice houses. You live in a small rented apartment with roommates. After spending time around our house, you might start desiring it too. It's just a matter of time. Michael and Molly's comments were pushing my anger to the brink. I was on the verge of exploding. Zayn heard it all but chose not to respond or defend himself, steering the conversation in a different direction. His nonchalant attitude surprised me. On our way home, I decided to address it with him. "Zayn, your parents are being unkind. They're insulting both of us. Why didn't you speak up?" "What did you expect me to say, Claire? I can't be certain they're entirely wrong. Women in the past have used me to try and benefit from my parents' wealth. They made grand plans involving the house and how it would be ours once my parents passed away. Even if they were gold diggers, that doesn't mean I am one too. You stayed silent when your family insulted me as well. You know my family is well off now. There's a chance they're right about everything. I'm not saying you had bad intentions, but I can understand why it might seem questionable. You don't have parents, so you rely on my inheritance alone. What you're suggesting is absurd, Zayn. I've never pressured you to spend money on me. And just because I don't have an inheritance doesn't give you the right to label me a gold digger." Zayn remained unwilling to acknowledge my concerns. Insisting that he loved me, and the reasons behind it didn't matter, he shrugged off the need for further discussion. While some might have found solace in such assurances, I couldn't accept the thought of him harboring negative beliefs about me. I attempted numerous conversations, hoping to make him understand my perspective. I even suggested therapy, recognizing its potential benefits for him. However, he adamantly claimed there was nothing wrong, causing me to eventually abandon the effort. As time passed, I distanced myself from his family. We became engaged shortly after my college graduation, and although my job paid decently, I started saving to contribute to our wedding expenses. We split the costs evenly and got married when I was 22. However, the subsequent 3 years turned into a tumultuous period of my life. Zayn frequently visited his parents, returning home in a sour mood each time. I knew Michael and Molly were still taunting him and branding me as a gold digger. Despite my pleas for Zayn to limit contact with them, he continued to engage with his parents. Their words poisoned his perception of our relationship, convincing him that no one could genuinely love him. Even after years of love and care, Zayn remained suspicious of me. The burden of constantly proving myself became increasingly draining. However, the breaking point arrived on Zayn's birthday. In line with his preference for small celebrations, we had a quiet cake party at home. I presented him with the expensive watch he had desired. Zayn was elated with the gift, but my joy waned when he suggested visiting his parents to showcase it. Despite my reluctance, I accompanied him at his insistence. Upon reaching their house, Zayn eagerly displayed the watch to Molly and Michael. "Mom, Dad, look at this beautiful watch Claire gave me. I've been wanting it for a while now. Isn't it gorgeous?" "Oh, did she know, Zayn? It seems she does love you after all. We were quite concerned for a while there." "Don't get carried away, Michael. She's a gold digger. She married our son because we own a $200,000 house. Let's not forget the facts." "Yeah, you're right. I almost forgot that the house is the only reason Claire married Zayn." "Excuse me? Why do you think I married your son for your house?" "Well, you were just living in an apartment after working for 4 years. Besides, Zayn is so much older than you. Why would you marry him unless you want something from him? I'm sure our house was always an attraction, if not his money." "I married your son because I love him. All your theories about my gold-digging intentions are wrong. Zayn knows the truth, and he will tell you that, won't you, Zayn?" To my complete surprise, Zayn remained silent. I was already feeling uncomfortable with my in-laws' belief that I was a gold digger, but Zayn's reaction, or lack thereof, shocked me. He kept his head down and avoided eye contact with me. Feeling perplexed, I decided to push him a bit. I couldn't fathom why he wasn't standing up for me. "Why are you not saying anything? Your parents always thought I was a gold digger. How will they know the real me if you don't tell them? Why are you quiet? Tell them they're wrong." I don't know what you want me to say, Claire. I don't know if my parents are off the mark. There might be a possibility that you're after this house." "Are you serious right now, Zayn? You believe I married you for your assets?" "He's not wrong to think like that. It's suspicious that you've never considered buying a house. You haven't even discussed it with him. For someone renting a place, owning a house should have been a priority." "Yeah, it should be a priority, but you've chosen not to work toward owning a house. Our place is expensive, and you can't afford something like this even if you tried. So you decided to marry Zayn and settle here. That makes more sense to me. I mean, why would you marry me, Claire? You might have feelings for me, but I think there's more to it than just love." I found myself speechless after this exchange. All the love I had for Zayn seemed to have been reduced to nothing. At the end of the day, my in-laws and even my husband viewed me as a gold digger. While my in-laws' reaction bothered me, it was Zayn's response that devastated me. In that moment, I made a decision. I wanted a divorce. I didn't immediately disclose my decision to them. I waited for the right time. So when Zayn and I returned to our place, I contacted a lawyer and initiated the divorce process. The lawyer assured me that the papers would be ready within a week. In the meantime, I opted to stay in a separate room. Zayn assumed I was just letting off steam and had no idea of what was coming. When the divorce papers finally arrived at my parents' house, I packed my bags and left. When Zayn called me in a panic, I instructed him to come to an address and bring my in-laws along. Despite his confusion, he agreed. Upon their arrival, I was waiting on the porch. They looked taken aback by the house. I said, "You must be wondering why I brought you here. It's a beautiful house, isn't it? No one can compare their house to this. It costs around $2 million in today's market. Pretty expensive, but worth the money. There's also furniture with an added value of millions. What is this place, Claire? I don't know why you have access to such a house. Why don't you guys come in so that we can talk? I can't tell you everything on my porch." "What do you mean by your porch?" I brushed off their astonishment and walked inside. They trailed behind, even more impressed by the opulence within. The owners of the house had spared no expense. As we settled down, I took a deep breath and addressed them. "I've reached a decision, and that's why you're here. I filed for divorce. Here are the papers. We can proceed with an uncontested divorce if you agree." "What? I don't understand. Why are you filing for divorce?" Zane's voice held a mixture of confusion and concern. "Because you and your parents believe I'm a gold digger. You think I'm after your house, right? Despite my assurances, you refuse to listen. So I'll spare you from my gold-digging self and divorce Zane. It seems that's what everyone wants. You're considering divorce just because my parents told the truth. That's ridiculous. We didn't say anything untrue. Why the dramatics?" Zane's tone betrayed his disbelief. "I think this is for the best, Zane. If she's adamant, you should sign the papers. At least then you'll find someone who truly loves you." His mother interjected, her expression unreadable. "Why did you bring us to this house? Do you expect me to buy this for you as part of our divorce settlement?" Zane's voice carried a tinge of accusation. "Why would I need you to buy this house, Zane? This house is already mine," I replied calmly. The shock and disbelief etched on their faces hit me like a bomb. They regarded me with disbelief, as if I were joking. Zane and his family seemed utterly unconvinced. "How on earth can you afford a house like this? You're renting, and your job isn't enough to cover this. Stop lying to us," Zane's father demanded, his tone sharp with suspicion. "I'm not lying, Zane. Remember when I mentioned that my parents left me some inheritance? Well, this is the house I was talking about. It's under a trust now, but I'll officially inherit it when I turn 30. I don't work a high-paying job because I have a trust fund waiting for me. That's impossible. Your parents passed away a long time ago. They should have let you have the house earlier." "Well, you see, my parents were aware of the potential leeches I might attract. So they instructed me never to disclose the house or trust fund to anyone. Call it foresight. But they knew someone could exploit me. Hence, they placed everything in a trust to keep it safe until I reached 30. By then, I'd hopefully be settled with someone who genuinely cared about me, not my inheritance." "Oh my God, Claire. You should have told us about your wealth. We had no idea. This is a sizable house you have. We could all live very comfortably here." "Yeah, you should have shared that sooner. We thought you were after our house. We could have avoided all the misunderstandings." I'd always knew Claire was perfect for Zane. I've been saying she's a great woman. Look how wealthy she is. Zane really found a great match. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. Their attitude toward me had shifted so rapidly that it made my head spin. What was even more bizarre was that they soon seemed to forget about the divorce filing. I took out the divorce papers and signed them. As I was saying, here's my signature for an uncontested divorce. You can just sign these to make it easy if you want to fight. We can take this to court. I won't live with you anymore. Claire, listen to me. There's no need to rush this. You've already proven you're not a gold digger. There's no reason to get a divorce anymore. We'll even apologize for any misunderstanding. That should make things better, right?" Yes, Michael is right. We're sorry, Claire. We doubted you for no reason. I don't want your insincere apologies, Zane. For 2 years, you allowed your family to berate me and label me a gold digger. I expected you to at least defend me. But no, you sided with them and accused me of being a gold digger as well. I won't stay with someone who doesn't respect his wife. I'm done with you. We can part ways amicably or involve the courts. The choice is yours. Zayn, Molly, and Michael tried their best to change my decision, pleading with me to let go of the past. In their minds, what happened was just a simple misunderstanding. Not once did they show remorse for tarnishing my name. Their audacity fueled my anger. When I reached my breaking point, I demanded they leave before I called the police. My anger intimidated them, and they left. Over the next few weeks, Zayn and my in-laws continued to harass me daily. They begged, pleaded, and even offered bribes to convince me to stay. Their belief that I could be swayed with money only intensified my fury. It revealed that they still considered me motivated by financial gain. The irony was that, as Zayn co-owned the house with his parents, I was entitled to half of his share. This realization fueled their desperation for reconciliation. Despite their attempts, I remained steadfast in my decision to part ways. I relocated all my belongings to my parents' house, asserting my right to stay there even before officially taking ownership. Zayn and the in-laws persisted in reaching out, prompting me to change my number entirely. I wanted to avoid their constant attempts to contact me from unfamiliar numbers. Zayn attempted to discuss matters at my workplace, but security was informed and asked him to leave. Zayn still hadn't signed the divorce papers, holding out hope for a change in my decision. Nearly a year has passed since I initiated the divorce proceedings. With only a year or less remaining before the legal process concludes, I've managed quite well on my own. Living independently, I've found happiness and financial stability. While I've gone on dates, I'm not considering anything serious at the moment. According to a cousin of Zayn's, they are apprehensive about paying me my entitled share of the house. Legal fees are piling up, and their savings are insufficient. Zayn is even pushing for a sale, harboring resentment toward his parents for the upheaval in his life. At this point, I simply don't care and only want to be free from that toxic family.
Hi everyone, I'm Daniela, and today I'm going to share my own story about my mother-in-law. Luckily, I didn't have to deal with my awful mother-in-law, Lily, for long. My husband Ian kicked her out early in our marriage, and here's why. I met Ian in college since we were studying the same subject. He was very shy and didn't talk to many people, but we bonded over our love for music and started dating quickly. We fell in love fast. Ian was an amazing person, but he had a troubling past. His dad died when he was 12, and his mom quickly remarried. Sadly, his new stepfather was very abusive. I won't go into details because it's sensitive, but it was bad enough for Ian to get a restraining order against him when he turned 18. When Ian told me his story, I wondered why his mom didn't protect him. I asked Ian, "Why didn't your mom do anything when her husband was hurting you?" "Didn't she know?" "She knew everything, Daniela," Ian replied. "But she didn't want to leave him because she loved him. I begged her to help, but she just told me to get over it. She even yelled at me when I got the restraining order." "That's terrible, Ian. She should have protected you." "Why do you still talk to her?" "I barely talk to her," Ian said. "I told her I'd support her if she left her husband, but until then, I keep my distance." I admired Ian even more after hearing his story. He worked hard to support himself through college, since there was no college fund for him. He was a great student and got a good job right after graduation. I also had a good job, so we got engaged early, but it took a long time to get married because of Lily. After Ian got his job, Lily suddenly decided to leave her husband, claiming it was because of Ian. She manipulated him into taking care of her financially. I warned Ian that his mom was playing with his emotions. "Ian, I don't like how your mom is handling this. She's making it seem like it's all your fault." "What can I do, Daniela? It's true that she had to leave him because of me. Now that she's choosing me, it's my duty to look after her." "I understand you want to care for your mom, but she's trying to control you emotionally," I told him. But it was hard to make Ian see that his mom wasn't really choosing him. She just knew he could support her now. There was another problem with Lily. She hated me. She would say things like, Just because Ian's marrying you doesn't mean you'll have him all to yourself. He's my son first and your husband later. I replied, it's funny you say that, Lily. I don't remember you ever putting your son first, and I don't mind if he looks after you. We're both his family. Don't try to be clever, Daniela. I can throw you out of Ian's life if I want to. I know you make less money than him, so it's clear you're marrying my son for money, she said. I'll prove it to him and make him leave you. Then I'll have all his attention and money, and you won't get anything, Lily threatened. I knew she wasn't going to be a good mother-in-law, she wasn't even a good mom. But her twisted thinking really shocked me. It was clear she didn't want Ian to spend money on anyone but her. Ian was already giving her a lot, so I didn't understand why she wanted more. That would become important later. Fast forward a year, and Ian and I finally got married. I was so happy to marry the man of my dreams. We were all set to move into the house I had inherited from my parents, but my joy only lasted a week. Just a week after we moved in, Lily showed up with all her stuff. She walked in like she owned the place and started choosing a room. I watched in confusion and asked, "What are you doing, Lily? Why did you bring all your things?" "Are you dumb or something, Daniela? This is my son's house now, so I'll be staying here too," she replied. "What are you talking about? You can't just walk in and demand to live here." "Listen to me, you little," she snapped. "This is my son's place, and I know he pays most of the bills, so I have every right to live here too. I warned you that I could kick you out of my son's life if I wanted to. This is just the beginning, Daniela. If you think you can throw me out, I'd like to see you try." I was stunned by Lily's nerve. I couldn't believe how confident she was. I decided to talk to Ian about it since I wasn't going to entertain Lily's outrageous demands. To my surprise, Ian already knew she was moving in. He begged me to let her stay until he figured out what to do. He didn't want his mom on the street and reminded me of his duty to her. I was really angry, but I gave him time to sort things out. Nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. Just a week after Lily moved in, I saw her invite someone over. From their conversation, I realized this woman was an interior designer. I didn't stop them because I had already had several fights with Lily and knew how nasty she could get. So I decided to deal with the problem if it actually became one. The next day, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered, not thinking much of it, and was surprised to find out it was the interior designer who had come to my house. She asked to meet me at a cafe because she had something important to tell me. I was alarmed and immediately set up a meeting. I had no idea how much my life was about to change. When I met with Sylvia, she said, "Hi, I'm Sylvia. You've probably seen me around before." "Hello, Sylvia. Yes, I've seen you. I guess my mother-in-law hired you for something. She mentioned you're an interior designer," I replied. "Yes, I am," Sylvia confirmed. "But some of the things your mother-in-law asked for didn't seem right, so I thought you should know." "Oh? What's the issue, Sylvia?" I asked, a bit concerned. "Actually, I didn't even know why Lily called you. This house is mine, and she's just staying here for a while. I was getting a little suspicious when she brought you over." Sylvia looked shocked. "Oh my God, this house is yours. Then you need to know something right away. It's a good thing I came to you. Your mother-in-law is trying to install cameras in your room. She wants to spy on you and your husband." I was shocked and disgusted by what Lily was planning. The idea that she wanted to invade our privacy like that was horrifying. Wow, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, she does this. "Does she know that what she's trying to do is illegal?" I asked. "Yes, she knows. I made sure she understood that, and I tried to convince her not to do it, but she threatened to hire someone else. I was worried about your safety, so I came to tell you," Sylvia explained. "Thank you so much for telling me, Sylvia. I'll always be grateful to you. Who knows what would have happened if you hadn't warned me. This is insane. I can't believe she would do something so horrible and illegal. But before I turned Lily down, I wanted to make sure you knew about this," Sylvia said. "You did me a huge favor, Sylvia," I replied. "And you know what? I'm going to hire you instead. I've realized we do need some cameras in the house, and I'm hoping you can help me set them up. Plus, I'd like to remodel my office as well." Sylvia was excited by the idea, so we made a plan. I had already started to suspect something was off with Lily as soon as she moved in. Yan and I had been away from the house for long periods, and I noticed someone else had been in the house besides Lily. I even found some strange clothes in the dryer that didn't belong to us. That's why I decided to install cameras in the house, especially near Lily's room. I wasn't going to put them in her room because that would be wrong and illegal. Sylvia and I carried out our plan perfectly. She didn't reject Lily's request but promised to bring the best cameras. In the meantime, Sylvia secretly set up cameras in our house while Lily was out shopping. Sylvia is a pro and hid the cameras well. Afterward, I told Ian about the cameras. Ian, I need to tell you something. I've installed some cameras in the house, I said. What? Why? Is something going on? Ian asked, surprised. Yes, Ian. Do you remember the weird clothes I found in the dryer? There's been other strange stuff happening. I think someone else is staying in our house. Oh my God, that's insane, Ian exclaimed. Yes, and all the signs point to your mother. Look, I know you trust her, but you need to wake up. She's not who you think she is, I said. Ian started to defend Lily and got mad at me, but I reminded him of her awful behavior, which quickly shut him up. We talked about a lot of things, but I didn't mention what Lily tried to do with Sylvia. I wanted Ian to realize on his own that something suspicious was happening. Once he agreed with me about the cameras, I could see my plan coming together. I also made sure Ian understood that we couldn't tell Lily about the cameras yet. He agreed and promised not to say anything. The next day, Ian and I went to work as usual. We both had direct access to the cameras in the house, but we were busy all day and didn't have time to check the footage. However, when we got home, we sat down together and watched what had happened throughout the day. You wouldn't believe what we found. Lily was having Ian's abusive stepfather over when we weren't home. This awful man was using our resources and staying with Lily, even though we had a restraining order against him. Ian was horrified by what Lily had done. He was furious and ready to take drastic action. I had never seen Ian so angry before. Before I could ask what to do, he yelled for Lily to come into our room. When she saw us watching the CCTV footage, she turned pale. Ian, what's going on? Why did you call me? Lily asked, clearly nervous. Mom, why did you bring that abuser into our house? Who gave you permission? Ian demanded. What are you talking about, Ian? You must be mistaken. I don't talk to your stepfather anymore. Remember, you made me choose, and I chose you, Lily replied, trying to deflect. Yes, you chose me, and I've supported you financially and even convinced Daniela to let you stay here. And this is how you repay me? Who did you really choose, Mom? Ian pressed. Lily's defense crumbled as Ian played the footage of her bringing his stepfather into the house. She turned pale and started sweating, realizing she was caught. How dare you invade my privacy and record me? You can't do this to me. Lily shouted, trying to regain control. Oh really? Is setting up a camera in my room to spy on me right? I retorted. If you can do that, why can't I put cameras in my own house? What are you talking about, Daniela? Ian asked, shocked. Mom tried to put cameras in our room, I explained. She even hired an interior designer for it, but the designer was honest and told me everything. Ian was furious. He felt the betrayal deeply and confronted Lily. She tried to justify her actions, claiming she was trying to protect Ian from me, but it was clear she was lying. How dare you accuse Daniela like that? Ian exploded. You're the one who betrayed me, used my money, and supported the man who abused me. No more lies, Mom. Get out of my house. I never want to see you again. Lily begged and cried, clinging to Ian's legs, but he was resolute. He packed her bags and threw them outside, telling her to leave. When she refused, Ian threatened to call the cops, and she finally left. That night, I comforted Ian as he dealt with the trauma of his mother's betrayal. The next day, we reported his stepfather to the police for breaking the restraining order and had all the locks in our house changed, thanks to Sylvia's help. Lily kept calling, begging for forgiveness, but we blocked her. She had no money and nowhere to go after her husband was arrested. She tried showing up at our house multiple times, but we always threatened to call the police. Eventually, Lily left town, and we haven't heard from her since. Ian went back to therapy to deal with his trauma, and we also attended couples counseling to improve our communication and work on the issues that Lily had caused in our marriage. Now we're doing much better and living a good life, while Lily is somewhere else, hopefully learning her lesson.
As they were about to stay with us, I hadn't made a reservation. My mind was blank with hostility on this family vacation that I didn't even want to go on, ending up at a fancy hotel. My husband, Spencer, pretends not to be aware of her animosity toward me and walks away, leaving me behind with a casual, "We'll see you at checkout, Emily." They disappear into the luxurious hotel. My name is Emily, and I finally turned 30 this year. I'm a stay-at-home mom living with Spencer, my mother-in-law Kate, and my son Sean, who turned 3 this year. Spencer and I met on a blind date 7 years ago and ended up marrying. We've been living an ordinary life without any major quarrels, known to be a couple very much in love among the neighbors. 2 years after we got married, we had our son. Spencer was busy with work, but actively helped me with childcare. I had no complaints about him, and we were living in a normal family environment. However, after the birth of Sean, things started to deteriorate. 6 months ago, my father-in-law passed away, and Kate moved in with us. The last time I saw her, other than at the wedding, was when Spencer and I visited her to announce our engagement. So it had been a long time, and my first impression of her was not a very good one. My father-in-law, on the other hand, treated me kindly, and I had a good impression of him. "Spencer, are you sure she is the right woman for you? I'm worried she's going to give you a hard time." I remembered her blatantly speaking her mind. Spencer tried hard to make her accept the marriage, but the way she looked at me was not very nice. We managed to get her approval after some persuasion from her husband and Spencer. I still think she shouldn't have openly made such remarks in front of me. I was worried if we could get along once she moved in with us. I tried to be positive and switched my mind to do my best with her when she and her belongings arrived at the house. I helped her unpack, and she was very kind to Sean, who turned 3 years old while she took care of him. Spencer and I unpacked, and I asked him to take care of the heavy stuff while I organized the small things. The unpacking went smoothly, and there was only the small stuff left for me to do. "This is supposed to go over here. I wonder what kind of education you went through." She commented about a fake plant that could be put anywhere. I put it there to improve the atmosphere of the room, but Kate pointed it out to me. Although displeased, I tried to think she was just particular and moved it to the spot she wanted. She looked after Sean for a little while and started watching TV without offering to help me. I didn't even have time to pay attention to him, but she scolded me to watch him. I had my hands full with him and unpacking. But I couldn't ask Spencer, who was taking a rest after carrying heavy things, to help me out. I finished tidying up with mixed feelings, trying to think that she was feeling unsettled about changing her living environment, pushing away my frustration for her. After that, her criticism continued every day, and one morning, I woke up early to prepare breakfast for everyone and tried to take a rest. The house was messy, and if I had time to rest, she insisted I should clean it up. She never gave me a moment of rest throughout the day, constantly criticizing how I did things. She was hardly ever at home during the daytime, let alone doing anything herself. I was getting mentally strained by such a life, and I decided to talk to Spencer about her. "She must be having a hard time since Dad's gone. Take it easy on her," I pleaded. However, he wasn't any help. Even though he knew how she treated me, he didn't intervene. Every night, regardless of my feelings, I found myself lying in bed, hands on my forehead, drifting off to sleep in despair. My 3-year-old son cried at night, unable to bear the fatigue and sleepiness. I couldn't bring myself up, and Spencer rushed to his side. Kate must have woken up by the noise and shook me violently. "How are you still sleeping when your son is crying? How can you live with yourself, Spencer? It's a woman's job." She yelled at me for being exhausted and unable to move. I didn't want to make things worse, so I quietly got up and went to Sean. I ended up getting no sleep that night. Spencer was off that day, and I was thinking about what to cook for lunch. Kate started preparing, and when she put the meals on the table, one plate was missing. It looks like one portion is missing. I married Spencer, who works hard, and my grandson, of course. "There's none for you. Make your own." I was absolutely mortified. I had been wondering if she was bullying me, but it became clear at that point. I had been unaware of it for a long time. I couldn't stand her without thinking that she was just being hard on me to make me a better wife. If I didn't think that way, I would have broken down. I couldn't talk back to her, so I confided in my friend after I dropped off Scene at daycare. That's definitely bullying. How are you holding up? I told the details to my best friend from childhood. She listened attentively and showed great concern, and I finally broke down in tears in front of her. I have been fighting against my frustrations and suppressing them at home for so long. She encouraged me, saying that I was doing my best and that I would be okay. I will help you. I will figure something out, she assured me. We parted as we both had things to do at home. Even though we didn't talk for very long, I felt lighter. My friend suggested a couple of things. One was to put a bug in the house and record what was said on a daily basis. I bought a cheap recorder on the way to pick up Scene and set it up discreetly at home. In the middle of cleaning, I picked up a piece of paper that had fallen out of a drawer in Kate's room. When I opened it, I saw a personal loan agreement, and the amount was $20,000. I couldn't believe my eyes, but I thought this might be useful and put the paper in my pocket. After a while, Kate returned and Spencer came home just in time for dinner. We sat around the dinner table with the usual complaints from Kate. Oh, by the way, my friend gave me a discount coupon for a one-night stay at the 5-star spa hotel. The fact that she brought up the subject suggested that she wanted to go. Spencer was very much in favor of it, and my son was also excited. I didn't feel particularly enthusiastic, assuming the trip would be a horrible experience for me. However, Kate surprised me with an unexpected invitation. Well, since you're here and always working so hard, you can come along too. I couldn't believe my ears, considering how much she had harassed me. Maybe she meant well, I thought, reluctant to believe she offered with malice. She expressed her desire to book everything the next day. Unable to sleep that night, I sat on the sofa for a long time contemplating the trip. Scene wanted to go too, but it was challenging to take him alone, and my mom couldn't watch him. Reluctantly, I considered Spencer's plea for me to join, even though he turned a blind eye to my suffering caused by his own mother. I don't want to go, Spencer. You don't help me when I'm being mistreated by your mother, I asserted. He couldn't say anything to that, but he pleaded with me to join. So, I gave him a condition. Have a look at this. I found it when I was cleaning Kate's room. I showed him the IOU with the $20,000 debt. His face showed disbelief. He couldn't believe his mother had such a debt. Can we help her pay this off as her son? He asked, knowing I'd managed our finances. I declined, having no good intentions to help someone who mistreated me. While I understood his feelings as a son, I couldn't accept his plea. I beg you. I want you to help me with this and the trip only if you accept my conditions, I proposed. The first condition was that he must intervene when Kate mistreated me. The second was to make rules for her, write them down, and post them all over the house. If she couldn't agree, we would kick her out. Spencer agreed, and I asked my friend to post the rules while we were away. We decided to act as usual until after the trip. Spencer and I would drop the bomb then. On the day of the trip, Spencer took everyone's bags, and we were about to leave the house. Kate's bullying started immediately. You don't need to carry the bags, let Emily do it. Spencer glanced at me apologetically, and I obeyed, not wanting to cause animosity before what was to come later. The bags were heavy, making it difficult for me to carry them while also taking care of Scene. I suppose I wouldn't have any energy left to enjoy the hotel. We took a bus a little further away and then drove over a mountain road to the hotel. The exterior and interior were beautiful and luxurious. Scene was excited, exploring every corner, and Kate went to check us in at the front desk. Afterward, as I grabbed my bag to go to the room, Kate's words blew me out of the hotel. Were you planning to stay with us? I only made a reservation for the 3 of us. I had no idea what she was talking about, and at that moment, it became clear she never intended to let me stay with them from the beginning. Gradually understanding the situation, I was shocked. I inquired, "Where should I sleep then?" To which she indifferently replied, "I I don't know, and I don't care. Why don't you just camp out in the wild around there? She nonchalantly asked me to join, casually suggesting I sleep out in the woods. Something was seriously wrong with her, and I couldn't help but feel enraged. I was on the verge of yelling at her, but she and my family vanished into the hallway with a casual, "I will see you at checkout time, okay?" Stunned, I stood in the lobby for a while before deciding to leave the hotel. I knew there was a catch, but I didn't expect to be forced to camp out. I was on the verge of tears. All I received from Spencer was a message saying, "I'm sorry," and I couldn't even bring myself to reply. It was past noon when we arrived, so I had lunch at a random cafe and found an open field with a good night view. As soon as I arrived at the field, my friend called, asking how the trip was going. I explained what had just happened, and she was furious. She offered to pick me up, but I declined. I was thankful, but I was sure Kate would get what she wanted if I left. I couldn't foresee what she might do to me later. After hanging up, I decided to consult a lawyer just in case. I sent him my evidence, intending to sue her for emotional abuse if she were to be kicked out after the trip. The lawyer assured me that I could file a claim if it was determined that there was no premeditation. I had concrete evidence that should have proven it. After the call, mental and physical exhaustion hit me hard, and I lay down on the fresh grass, ending the day in an open field with a beautiful night view and a gentle breeze. The next morning, I met up with Kate and my family just in time for checkout. Kate immediately criticized, "Emily, did you stay in the woods? I bet you didn't even clean yourself. You're so filthy." Spencer tried to intervene, but she quickly changed the subject. It seemed he must have told her that forcing me out was too much. She bragged happily about how nice the hotel was, and Scene's smile was my only consolation on the way back home. Upon our return, Kate immediately shouted, "What is all this? Don't play with me." There were rules posted all over the house. She must have read some of them because her face turned red, and she became furious. Then Spencer showed her the IOU, and her red face immediately turned pale. Initially attempting to deny it, she eventually confessed to a spree with her late husband's life insurance. When the money ran out, she couldn't stop the habit and borrowed from Spencer. We proceeded as discussed, and Spencer firmly stated, "I can't have someone who has a debt living with us. I would ask you to leave. Of course, I have proof of what you have done to me. I will sue you," I declared, playing the recording for her to listen. As she heard the playback, her face turned as white as a ghost, and she begged me to let her stay. I informed her that she could stay if she agreed to abide by the rules and refrain from aggressive behavior. She eagerly agreed and apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry. Please help me. I beg you." Witnessing her in this state was unexpected, and I felt a sense of satisfaction, thinking it was finally over. My knees buckled, and I fell to the floor. Spencer sat me down in a chair and started yelling at her about the debt. His respect and trust for her had undoubtedly crashed down, and she must have never imagined a day when her son would scold her furiously, to which she frantically apologized. After settling everything, she kept silent and stared at the sky for the rest of the day. The atmosphere in the household changed drastically the next day. When I woke up early to prepare breakfast as usual, Kate immediately made a nasty remark. What differed from usual was the change in Spencer's attitude. He spoke out in a firm tone, saying, "Mom, we just talked about this yesterday." She choked on her words and went to sit on the sofa. Though tempted to laugh at the scene, I held it in and continued preparing breakfast. Spencer felt guilty about not being a protector and couldn't stand strong against Kate, who raised him. I knew in my heart that he was a kind man, and there must have been something on his mind to turn a blind eye. I didn't blame him. Though I needed him on my side, I couldn't hate the man I fell in love with. He apologized to me in tears, and afterward, he started to watch over me, while Kate's attitude improved day by day. She still pointed out some minor things, but I didn't feel any malice from her. I hoped she would continue like this, allowing me to live with ease and maintain a healthy mind. The debt payment was $700 a month, and Spencer and I cooperated to pay it back, as Kate was too old to work, I secured a part-time job, balancing work and home responsibilities. Kate took care of taking my son to and from daycare, doing a commendable job. Despite her bad habit, Spencer managed her finances. Our family changed gradually for the better. Though dealing with a terrible mother-in-law might make some consider divorce, I couldn't bring myself to do that. Fortunately, I found a solution that helped rebuild my family. I felt lucky and grateful for my friend who listened and encouraged me during tough times. Without her, I would have had no one to vent to, possibly leading to a mental breakdown. When remembering the pain I went through, I get teary-eyed but pat my own shoulder, acknowledging that I tried my best to hold my family together, even in moments of depression and lacking motivation to cook and clean. I completed my tasks to ensure everyone could have a decent life, especially my son, and the sense of accomplishment fills my heart. While I may never fully forgive Kate, she will always be my mother-in-law, and I choose to treat her kindly. Several years have passed since then, and my son has grown up, starting preschool. We are almost finished paying off our debts and are considering moving to a new house. Kate has started to help me a little, and my relationship with Spencer has become better than before. We are even thinking of having another child. My family is now stable, and I am content. I will continue to do my best for my family. Oh, indeed? Is it true that you've acquired a house? If so, I'd be interested in living with you. Unexpectedly, my mother-in-law started uttering such an absurd proposition over the phone. She must have caught wind of our recent home purchase from my husband. I could discern my sister-in-law's amused chuckles in the background. Does she believe her laughter can go unnoticed? Honestly, I have no desire to reside with my mother-in-law and the others. I thought my husband shared the same sentiment. However, the fact that they've been informed about our new house. Could it be that they're assuming we'll be living together? The idea that my beloved husband might be in cahoots with them fills me with a bit of apprehension. Yet, I have no intention of yielding to their wishes. Are they trying to manipulate me? If that's their game, I'll reverse the roles. Reflecting on all my past tribulations, I pledged revenge against them. I am Kate Thompson, 30 years old, working as an ordinary employee at a major financial corporation. I married my husband Joe 3 years ago, and though we don't have children yet, there's a valid reason for that. A decision we both took seriously. Joe and I are fully committed to our careers, toiling daily with the aim of advancing. Once our professional lives stabilize, we plan to build our own home and create a stable environment for raising children. We've agreed to revisit the topic of having kids once our careers settle down. This was a decision we made earnestly, sharing our genuine feelings and thoughts. We do aspire to have children eventually, and now, as we prepare for that, I find myself recalling all my past struggles. Then one day, I successfully executed a well-planned project at work, and my promotion was officially confirmed. While my salary was already sufficient, the promotion brought even more comfort to our lives. On the other hand, Joe, although not promoted, received a substantial salary increase due to his years of service. With both our incomes on the rise, I felt it was time to turn our long-held dream into reality. So I broached the topic with Joe. Joe, I want to talk to you. Over the past year, both of us have had stable incomes. I think it might be time to consider getting our own home. What do you think? Oh, is it time already? From his excited voice, I could tell Joe was thrilled. Actually, I've been thinking about it too, but since I haven't been promoted yet, I felt a bit hesitant to bring it up. Don't worry about that. It's not like only one of us needs to earn money. I was thinking it might be okay to build our home in my name. Really? Well, you do earn more now. If you're okay with it, let's build our home in your name. All right, let's proceed with that. Let's go see some model houses on our next day off. Sounds great. Let's go. We shouldn't miss this opportunity. I really feel grateful for choosing Joe at times like this, as we share the same values. The following week, we made an appointment to view model homes as planned. We looked at various types of houses, expanding our vision for our own home. On weekends, we began creating simple floor plans together, researching online. During a recent visit to a construction company, they suggested that instead of leaving everything to them, it's better if we create our own image for a more satisfying home. So Joe and I started building that image. However, neither of us has much knowledge of architecture or design. Even with research, it takes time to put it into practice. While taking breaks, we continued working, and then the doorbell rang. I thought it was a delivery, but when I opened the door, my mother-in-law was standing there. Unexpectedly, Mother, what brings you here so suddenly like this? My mother-in-law sometimes visits our place without notice. She glared at me and, without a word, took off her shoes and went into the house on her own. I'm here, Joe. Mom, what's up? Surprised by his mother's call, Joe showed a startled reaction. Did you have some business around here? To Joe's question, his mother looked a bit perplexed. Yes, I told Kate about it over the phone a little while ago, but it seems Joe didn't know. I see. Maybe Kate forgot to tell me. Seems like it. Kate, even though she's still young, has a terrible memory. That's not true, Mom. It's not forgetfulness. Kate is incredibly busy with work, and at the same time, she takes care of the household. Her mind is always full of things to do. You're such a kind boy, Joe. If your late father were here, he definitely wouldn't have forgiven that. I really respect Kate from the bottom of my heart. So, Mom, why did you come here today? To Joe's question, his mother smiled contentedly. Then, she slowly took out a travel brochure from her bag, spread a page with a post-it note on the table, and showed it. Listen, Joe. I've always wanted to go to Niagara Falls. Won't you take me, please? My mother-in-law began to say such things excitedly out of the blue. Caught off guard by the sudden request, both Joe and I were left staring at her, mouths agape. My mother-in-law, relentless, kept pressing Joe, who was clearly flustered. Come on, Joe, you agree, right? Think of it as a way to show filial piety. Wait a minute, Mom. I'm in trouble if you suddenly say you want to go on a trip, though you can come too. Actually, I was thinking of going with Claire, but if Joe wants to go, I'm delighted to turn it into a family trip. Claire is Joe's sister. What are you talking about? Kate is here, and I can't get time off from work. But it's strange for me to pay for a trip for you and my sister, right? Not strange at all. Spending money for the family is a wonderful thing, don't you think so, Kate? Suddenly turning to me, my mother-in-law sought my agreement. Though shaken, I firmly expressed my opinion to her. Well, using one's own money for family isn't bad, but I think imposing it on others is different. What do you mean by that? Are you saying I'm trying to extort travel expenses from Joe? I didn't mean to say it in such a harsh way, but listening to you, it sounded like you just wanted us to pay for the trip, Kate. That's terrible. I had no such intention, but you're making me out to be the villain in front of Joe. I'm so shocked. That's not. I didn't mean to call you a villain. I just answered honestly to what was asked. Okay, no need for excuses, Kate. Why are you so heartless? You must not like me, do you? My mother-in-law, visibly upset, glared at me with icy cold eyes. It always turns out like this when she comes over. She always finds some reason to demand money and then squanders it with Claire, Joe's sister. Spending money for the family sounds nice, but what my mother-in-law does is practically extortion. The situation is entirely different when Joe gives them money out of kindness. No matter that they're family, I never really liked Joe's brazen mother and sister. According to Joe, his mother and sister became so selfish after his father passed away. Joe's father died when he was in high school, and since then, they have lived as a trio. While his strict father was alive, he watched over the finances. But with his departure, there was no one to stop them. and they even freely spent the life insurance money. Also, since Claire works part-time, not as a full-time employee, her salary is low, and their life is always on the edge. So this is why she regularly visits our house, making excuses like life is tough, or I want to relax and travel somewhere to extort money from Joe. Before marrying Joe, it seemed he was at the mercy of his mother and her demands after his father's death. A sense of dependence for being cared for by his mother had bound Joe. However, since marrying me, Joe seems to be gradually realizing their true nature. Even when repeatedly asked for money, recently he's been trying hard to refuse. For Joe, that's quite a growth. Moreover, he has recently become able to speak back firmly to his mother. To my mother-in-law's spiteful words like, "You don't like me, do you?" Or "Why should I for such an uncharming daughter-in-law?" Joe responded clearly, "Just because you're my mother doesn't mean you can speak badly of Kate. Didn't Kate just answer what you asked her, Mom? You're taking Kate's side. What are you talking about?" "I think you're in the wrong here, Mom. That's so unfair. Surely Kate must have poisoned your mind against me. Poor thing, you were such a kind child before we got married." "I'm telling you that's not it. I'm saying this because I think so." Joe's firm response surprised my mother-in-law, who was not used to being talked back to like that. With a frustrated look, biting her lower lip, she said, "Fine," and left. "Kate, I'm sorry. I'd always make you feel uncomfortable." "No, it's okay. You stood up for us this time. Once we build our own home, we'll be further away. Let's not interact with Mom and them." "Then yeah, that would be a relief. If you're okay with it, Joe, I'm grateful." The place we are considering for our new home is quite far from our current apartment, improving the convenience to both of our workplaces. Our current apartment is about 5 train stations away from Joe's parental home, but the new house will be 3 times farther and require transfers. The route from the station is also complex, so if we don't give them the address, they won't be able to find our new home. It's a good chance to cleanly break off our relationship with my mother-in-law. Later, we submitted our imagined floor plan to the construction company, and the construction started 2 months later. After about half a year, our $500,000 dream home was completed. We managed to squeeze some time from our busy work schedules to pack a few days before the move. I received a call from my mother-in-law on my smartphone. "Busy packing." I turned on the speaker and answered the phone. "Hello," I said, and my mother-in-law started speaking in an unusually high-pitched voice. "Kate, when are you moving? You bought a house, right? I want to live with you." Suddenly, on the phone, my mother-in-law began to say such an outrageous thing. She must have heard about our new home purchase from Joe. I could hear Claire, my sister-in-law, chuckling in the background. "That's great. We can make Kate work for us every day. Mom, you came up with a good idea." Do they think their words aren't reaching me? It's clear they plan to piggyback on our move. I imagine them planning to use me for an easy life. Honestly, I have no intention of living with them. I thought Joe felt the same, but telling them about the new house. Could it be that they're assuming we'll live together? The thought that my beloved Joe might be in league with them fills me with a bit of fear. But I have no intention of letting them have their way. They're probably trying to use me, right? If that's the case, I'll turn it around and use them. I told them the date of our move. Then my mother-in-law and Claire said, "We'll come to the apartment in the afternoon on that day. Take us with you in the car, and arrange the movers for us too." They hung up after making their demands. But of course, I have no intention of complying. For now, I'll check the facts with Joe. As I was about to go and tell Joe this, he was already standing behind me. "Joe, you were there. I came to say we should take a break, but was that Mom on the phone just now?" "Ah, yes. I was going to talk to you about it too." "Why did you tell your mother about our new home?" "It's not like that. Actually, when Mom came over last time, she seems to have seen the floor plan of our new house. She kept pestering me about it every day. So, I just... Kate, I'm really sorry." "I see. So you don't intend to live with your mother, right?" "Of course not. After hearing that phone call, I'm even thinking it's better to cut ties with her." Joe's expression was filled with more anger than ever. It was the first time I had seen him this angry. From what Joe told me, my mother-in-law had seen the layout of our new home and was convinced it was a spacious house. She had pretended to be interested and called Joe repeatedly, asking him about the number of rooms and details of the facilities. But it seems that Joe is on my side, which relieved me. Then there's no problem at all. This made me determined to get my revenge on my mother-in-law. I've had enough of her saying whatever she wants, but it's goodbye to that now. I'll make sure to settle this properly. And so, the day of the move arrived. Joe and I had the movers transport our things in the morning and headed to our new home in our car. By the time we finished moving everything, it was already past 1:00 p.m., checking our phones while taking a break. We saw dozens of missed calls from my mother-in-law. She called me too, Joe said, sounding weary. Then, my mother-in-law called again. I answered the phone with the speaker still on. Hello, Kate. Where are you? I told you I'd be at the apartment in the afternoon, didn't I? Yes, you did say that. So what can I do for you? What do you mean? You didn't arrange for the movers. I've been waiting at home, and not a single truck has shown up. So I had to go to your apartment myself. Is that so? Well, that's too bad. You know, I didn't arrange for any movers. What? That's not the agreement. Where is your new house? Huh? You really think I'd tell you? After saying that clearly, my mother-in-law uttered a dumbfounded huh. She probably thought that as long as Joe was there, she could always have her way. But Joe is different now. He's my precious ally, trying to cut off the bad ties with his family. Determined to release all my pent-up feelings, I spoke firmly. Just to let you know, neither Joe nor I have any intention of living with the two of you from now on. Please don't involve yourselves in our lives. What are you saying? Your opinion doesn't matter. It's up to Joe to decide. At least tell me where the new house is right now. Huh? How are you going to get here without even knowing the address? This house is in my name. I have the right to decide who lives here. If you two just barge in, it's trespassing, and I'll sue you right away. What? Trespassing? How rude to say that about your husband's family. At that point, Joe spoke up in a deathly cold voice. Family? My father, who was a family member, is already gone, isn't he? What are you saying, Joe? After hearing that last phone call, I'm utterly fed up with you two. Just having a blood relation with you is embarrassing. From now on, my family is only Dad and Kate. I no longer consider you two as my family. Wait, Joe, don't say such things. Don't bother us again, got it? With that, Joe hung up without waiting for her reply. He swiftly set his phone to block her calls. Hey, Joe, are you really okay with this? Yeah, I finally realized that Mom was just using me to her advantage. I feel completely relieved now. Joe looked truly refreshed, sincerely believing what he said. That's how we, as a couple, managed to cut off the bad ties with my mother-in-law and sister. Afterwards, they had to change their lifestyle drastically, as Joe stopped supporting them completely. Without any contact with Joe, they lost their fallback option. Later on, my sister-in-law's part-time income wasn't enough, and my mother-in-law had to start working part-time as well. Being a housewife for so long, she wasn't used to the working environment and was clumsy, often being disliked at her workplace. Meanwhile, we live a peaceful life in our new home, with no sudden visits from my mother-in-law anymore. We are truly stress-free. I'm endlessly grateful to Joe for believing in me and cutting ties with his toxic blood relatives. We might face various challenges in the future, but even then, I trust Joe, and we will support each other and walk through life together.
One day, something really unexpected happened to me. It all began when I took my husband to the doctor for a regular checkup. We thought it would be just a normal visit, but it turned out to be a big shock. The doctor, Dr. Lawrence looked very serious and told us some scary news about my husband's health. His serious face made it clear this was serious. I felt really scared and couldn't believe what I was hearing. The person I loved and took care of was now causing me worry and fear. Dr. Lawrence told me I should think about my own safety and maybe stay away from my husband for a while. His words made me feel really overwhelmed and afraid. My name is Betty Frieden, and I'm 50 years old. I spent the last 10 years working at a big company that makes medicine. That place feels like a second home to me, giving me comfort and making me feel like I belong there. Even though I'm older, I've kept working full-time and earned respect from my coworkers. Not many people my age still work full-time, but I've always been okay with it. Part of the reason I'm so dedicated to my job is because I didn't get married until 4 years ago. My boss, Gerald, and I are close because we're both single. Once he jokingly asked me if I was ever going to get married, but I knew he was just teasing. Around that time, I was seeing Richard secretly. He's older than me, was married before, and like me, doesn't want kids. We met through a service that helps people find companionship later in life. We decided to keep our marriage quiet, not telling anyone about our plans, even though our boss made jokes about us getting married. Eventually, Richard and I got married quietly, without any big ceremony, just signing papers at City Hall. It was simpler than I expected, but I was excited about our future together. But when Dr. Lawrence gave me scary advice, I had to rethink everything. My feelings of care for my sick husband were now mixed with fear and confusion. Dr. Lawrence's words kept echoing in my head, telling me I needed to act to keep myself safe. As I stood there trying to understand what was happening, I realized I had to make a decision quickly. Suddenly, the life I knew and the plans I had were uncertain. I'm LA, and my husband Richard works at a factory. Honestly, I make more money than he does. Richard started working at the factory right after high school. I grew up in an orphanage and always wanted to be independent. That's why I didn't want to quit my job at the pharmaceutical company even after we got married. I love my job too much. When Richard and I got married, I told my boss Gerald right away. He congratulated me, but I could tell he felt a little sad. Maybe he was lonely because I, his friend who was also single, got married first. I tried joking with him about it, but he didn't seem to want to talk about it, so I dropped it. Even though Gerald's reaction was a bit strange, I was really happy to start this new part of my life with Richard. I imagined all the great things we'd do together, but real life wasn't as exciting as my dreams. Being newlyweds was pretty normal. Not much changed for me. I kept working, and the biggest difference was moving to a quieter area and driving to work instead of taking a bus. Richard and I shared my old car because he didn't have one. About a year after we got married, things started to go wrong. Richard began acting differently. He didn't seem himself. He barely touched his breakfast, seemed lost in his thoughts, and even mixed up simple things like condiments. His clothes didn't match, and he became quieter both at work and at home. While I've always admired Richard's quiet strength, his silence started to weigh heavily on me, making me feel like I was all alone. This feeling of loneliness grew as I noticed these small but important changes in him. It hit me that Richard might be going through a mental health problem. Seeing someone you love struggle without knowing how to help them is really tough. So I decided to take Richard to a special clinic that helps with both mental and physical health. There, he was diagnosed with depression. I knew a bit about depression, but hearing the official diagnosis made everything seem a bit darker. The doctor explained that the best way to deal with depression is to figure out what's causing it and tackle that directly. But finding out what exactly was making Richard depressed was hard. He'd been working at the same factory for years without any problems, and nothing big had changed at his job. I even worried that maybe our marriage was somehow making him feel this way. As we talked with the doctor, I reassured him that Richard and I were living a happy life together, and we couldn't pinpoint any specific problems at home that might have caused Richard's depression. The doctor told us to come back if anything changed, or if we figured out what might be causing his depression. But even after visiting the clinic multiple times, we couldn't find out why Richard was feeling so down. And as time went on, his depression only got worse. On his worst days, he could hardly get out of bed, often had headaches, and sometimes had to call in sick to work. He lost his appetite and a noticeable amount of weight. Eventually, he had to quit his job because he couldn't keep up anymore. Richard felt really guilty for relying on me financially, but I assured him that I was okay with working. My main concern was his health. It was really hard to see him suffering so much, and I was always worried about him. Once, when I was at work, Richard went out and got lost on his way back home. That made me worry even more because I wondered if he was not just dealing with depression, but maybe even dementia. That thought added to my stress. When my coworkers asked how things were going, I had to admit that Richard wasn't getting better. It's really tough to watch someone you love struggle so much without being able to help them. One day, Gerald, my boss, noticed that I looked really tired and gave me an energy drink. It made me feel a little better, and I was touched by his kindness. He reminded me that we're all in this together, and his words almost made me cry. With everything going on with Richard, I hadn't realized how much stress I was under. It became clear that I needed to take care of myself too, or else I might fall apart. So I threw myself into my work, trying to keep things as normal as possible in our lives. A year had gone by, but things hadn't gotten any better for Richard. If anything, they'd gotten worse. As our third wedding anniversary approached, I couldn't see any improvement in his condition. Then, one morning, I realized our car was missing. I checked again, but it was definitely gone. Since Richard's diagnosis, I was the only one who drove it, and I hadn't used it since the day before. So it should have been at home. I asked Richard if he knew where the car might be. He said he thought it was there when he got home yesterday. I remember he had gone out for a bit while I was at work. The doctor had suggested he try walking or jogging to help him cope. If the car was there when he came back, it must have disappeared during the night. With the car gone, I had to use public transport and ended up being about 10 minutes late for work. I explained the situation to Gerald, my boss, who was understanding but curious about the car's disappearance. He wondered if Richard might have taken it, but I didn't think so. Given Richard's condition and his reluctance to drive since getting sick, it didn't seem likely. Despite Richard's memory lapses and mood swings, I couldn't imagine him being responsible for the missing car. The car mystery just added another layer of complication to our already tough situation. Right after realizing the car was gone, I reported it to the police, hoping it would turn up soon. But deep down, I worried it might be gone for good. And if that wasn't enough, something else strange happened. On payday, I went to the bank to withdraw some money and found that my personal account was empty. I was shocked. We had a joint account, which I checked next, only to find it was also empty. This left me completely puzzled. Richard and I shared the joint account, but he didn't have access to my personal account, and he didn't know its PIN. Yet somehow, all our savings had disappeared. It hit me hard, and when I got home, I confronted Richard about it. I asked Richard if he knew anything about the money missing from our joint account. He seemed genuinely puzzled and said he didn't know anything about it. Because of his depression, I was hesitant to push him further, worried it might make things worse for him. Richard was staring at the ceiling, looking distant, like he often did when he was lost in his thoughts because of his condition. It made me wonder if he could have taken the money, but I wasn't sure. Planning to talk to the police about it, I felt overwhelmed by losing both our car and our savings. The financial strain was tough, especially since I didn't have family to lean on for support. Growing up in an orphanage meant I didn't have parents to help me out in tough times. With Richard's condition not improving, it was suggested that we moved him to a bigger hospital with more resources than the small clinic we'd been going to. The clinic had done what they could, but they thought a general hospital could give him better care. They even gave us a referral letter, so we decided to go to the general hospital for the first time. Taking a taxi there was a bit nerve-wracking for me, and Richard stayed quiet throughout the journey, lost in his own thoughts. As we arrived at the hospital, I took a deep breath, preparing for whatever might come next. I walked into the hospital and handed over the referral letter at the reception, expecting to wait a while since it was a busy place. The lobby was full of patients, each waiting for their turn. After about an hour, Richard was finally called in for his consultation. While he went inside, I took out a book to pass the time. But before Richard had even settled into the doctor's office, a nurse came up to me. "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Simmons?" she asked. I said yes, and she told me the doctor wanted to see me. Since I was used to discussing Richard's condition, I figured it was something similar this time. I followed her to another room, feeling a bit anxious. There, I met a doctor who looked a bit older than me, with gray hair and a kind manner. Before I could even sit down properly, I asked if this was about Richard's condition. He nodded seriously, and I braced myself for whatever news he had for me. The doctor's next words caught me completely off guard. He told me that Richard had been arrested for fraud 10 years ago and advised me to keep my distance from him. I was utterly confused. Why was this coming up now during a routine medical visit? The doctor explained that he suspected Richard might be faking his depression. He remembered treating a deep cut on Richard's leg during surgery 10 years ago, which raised his doubts. This revelation shocked me. I thought we were dealing with Richard's mental health, but now I was learning about his hidden past and a possible deception about his current condition. It was a lot to process, and I struggled to reconcile the caring husband I knew with the person the doctor described. When the doctor mentioned recognizing a large scar on Richard's right leg, it all started to make sense. I knew of the scar but didn't know how Richard got it, as he had never mentioned it. Finding out that the doctor before me was the one who had treated Richard's injury years ago felt like an unbelievable twist of fate. As the doctor continued, he revealed more about Richard's past. Richard had injured himself during a dispute with his ex-wife, which stemmed from him stealing her money and luxury items. Shockingly, he had even pretended to have dementia to lower his ex-wife's guard before committing the fraud. This pattern of faking illnesses to aid his deceit was truly disturbing. Learning about Richard's criminal history and arrest was overwhelming. I hadn't looked into his background before marrying him. Having been alone for most of my life, I was just grateful to find someone who wanted to be with me. The doctor's serious warning that Richard could be a danger to me sent shivers down my spine. His tone made it clear that this was a serious situation. It hit me hard. I had been deceived. In the days that followed, I struggled to act normal around Richard while secretly planning my next moves. I decided to install surveillance cameras around our home to monitor Richard's actions when I wasn't there. About a week later, I noticed a watch and bag were missing. When I reviewed the camera footage, I saw Richard leaving the house with them and returning later with a lot of cash, looking pleased with himself. His behavior didn't match that of someone suffering from depression. This footage confirmed my worst fears. Richard was the one behind the theft of my belongings, the car, and our savings. Seeing the hard evidence of his deceit was heartbreaking. Richard had lied to me and manipulated me, betraying the trust I had in him. It was clear that I needed to take serious action against someone who had pretended to be vulnerable and in need of care, only to take advantage of my kindness and generosity. The realization that Richard had betrayed my trust was unbearable. I had dedicated my life to working and caring for what I thought was a sick partner. The idea of getting a divorce seemed too small compared to the immense deception I had experienced. It was clear we needed to go our separate ways, but I wanted more than just a legal separation. I wanted Richard to truly grasp the seriousness of his actions and to make amends for the harm he had caused. With a heavy heart and tears threatening to spill, I gathered the divorce papers and filled them out meticulously, including all the necessary details. The following day, pretending everything was normal, I told Richard I needed to step out for a moment. I had already arranged to take a day off from work, explaining the urgency of my situation to my employer, who had agreed to my sudden absence. At the police station, I presented my case to the officers, showing them the footage I had captured of Richard's deceit. At first, they were hesitant to take action based solely on the video. However, after checking with the pawn shop where Richard had sold the stolen items and finding my car being sold as used, the evidence against him started to pile up. They also confirmed that he had accessed my bank accounts illegally, and suspicions arose about his supposed depression. As the truth came out, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. Given Richard's criminal history, the police decided to act quickly and prepared to arrest him. When we returned home with the officers in the early afternoon, Richard looked surprised to see me and even more shocked by the police presence. Despite the divorce papers I held, his focus was on the officers as they informed him of his arrest for fraud. Richard protested, trying to use his depression as a defense, but I wasn't fooled. The doctor from the general hospital had already cast doubt on Richard's claims about his mental health. In that moment, facing the consequences of his actions and the end of our marriage, Richard's mask started to slip. Deciding to take legal action was tough, but it was necessary to protect myself and seek justice for the betrayal I had experienced. During my recent visit to the hospital, a doctor recognized Richard from his past deceitful behavior. He revealed that Richard had once pretended to have dementia to deceive his ex-wife, which made me question his current claims of depression even more. Despite the serious accusations against him, Richard remained unfazed in front of the police, casually denying everything. It was almost as if his history of deceit had prepared him for this moment. He showed no signs of guilt or remorse, instead challenging us to provide proof of his fraudulent actions. His boldness was shocking, especially with the police ready to arrest him based on solid evidence. It was clear that he was accustomed to manipulating situations and underestimating their seriousness. For 4 years, he had deceived me, taking advantage of my trust to steal from me and exploit my kindness. Yet, in a twisted attempt to shift blame, Richard suggested that it was my fault for being too trusting, which felt like another insult. His audacity was astounding. I had supported him, hoping for his recovery, only to be betrayed and treated with disdain. In that moment, I lost my patience. I declared my intention to seek legal advice and pursue alimony, urging Richard to face the consequences of his actions. My outburst at the police station surprised everyone, including the officers, but it finally seemed to shake Richard's composure. As the police handcuffed him, his defiance crumbled. He looked defeated, his arrogance replaced with frustration as he was led away. Watching the scene unfold, I felt detached, as if I were watching someone else's life unravel. Ever since the doctor's warning, nothing had seemed real anymore. Yet, here I was, confronted with the harsh reality of my situation, determined to move forward from the chaos Richard had caused. Watching Richard being taken away by the police felt surreal, almost like a scene from a dream. This moment marked a turning point, allowing me to imagine a return to the life I had before the chaos of marriage consumed it. As a sense of relief washed over me, knowing I wouldn't spend my future under Richard's manipulative control, I also felt a wave of loneliness. Waiting more than 47 years to marry, the idea of being alone once again overshadowed my newfound freedom. 2 months later, our divorce was finalized. Richard's arrest had caused a slight delay in the process, but by the time everything was official, my emotions had settled. I was able to reflect on our shared history with a clear mind. Richard's future was uncertain, facing imprisonment for his second offense. I could only hope that this experience would lead him to sincerely reconsider his choices. In the aftermath of our dissolved marriage, which had become nothing more than a disillusioning memory, I found myself contemplating my next steps over a simple lunch at work. It was then that my boss, Gerald, approached me with his store-bought hot dog lunch and made a seemingly casual yet loaded comment. "I think you'd be just fine if you were with me," he said almost offhandedly. His words caught me off guard, and it took a moment for their full weight to sink in, leaving me momentarily flustered. "Yes, I'm serious," he added, noticing my hesitation. His tone was smooth yet sincere. I was speechless, momentarily forgetting about my lunch as I processed his proposition. Gerald then went back to work, leaving me to contemplate his unexpected offer. In the days that followed, the idea of a romantic relationship with Gerald had never crossed my mind. Yet, I couldn't ignore the care and stability he had always shown me. His steady presence and responsible nature suddenly made me see him in a new light. Despite my initial reaction, as I continued to eat and ponder, the seeds of possibility that Gerald had planted began to take root in my mind, suggesting a future I hadn't dared to imagine until now. The idea of inviting Gerald out for a meal after work sparked a warmth within me. It kindled a sense of hope for the future. Perhaps this was the perfect moment to embark on a new journey, to explore the possibility of happiness and companionship once again. The thought of stepping out of my comfort zone and into a new beginning with someone who had shown me kindness and support felt both thrilling and comforting. Tonight, I decided, could be the start of something new and beautiful.